Winkler will now kick off our forum with his welcome message.
Okay, good morning, everybody. So I wanted to thank you, Catherine, you said it very well, and I'm one of those that probably needed the help in figuring out what a hashtag is. I will readily admit I don't jump on social media, but I'm glad that we have a bunch of people that do, and I'm sure there are some snickers there because I probably should know at this point in my career what a hashtag is. But moving right along. So what you have in front of you is the executive strategy team, and I wanted to say, before I dive into the slides themselves, I do want to say thank you for all that you are doing. I mean, clearly this year has been a significant effort for literally everybody on this screen, as well as those that really aren't fortunate enough to make it today because they're out really dealing with and fighting the things that, quite honestly, have made 2020 such a unique year. I won't mention all of the things that we're dealing with because you all readily know, but I will definitely say that I can't tell you enough how appreciative I am and how I'm looking forward to coming out of the other side of what all of these kind of different events are creating for a new normal for us. And that is the perfect transition into our executive strategy team discussion. So it began meeting in February of this year. And our executive strategy team is made up of a new organizational approach. And that new organizational approach is 4 assistant directors and myself, and assistant directors that are overseeing each of the kind of priority and strategic direction areas for the agency. It's assuring alignment for the agency and enterprise areas, and it's recognizing that we have to transition to an agency that's looking to the future and recognizing that the future is changing at a very rapid rate and the transportation sector is changing at a rapid rate for us. So the executive strategy team is really looking to consider where we'll be in 5 to 10 years as opposed to 5 months. And I know that really feels strange right now, quite frankly, because tomorrow could bring another curve. But I think it's important that we recognize that. Our goal is to build stronger external relationships and manage those external needs alongside all of our operational realities, and work closely and engage with senior leaders of the agency, all of your division administrators and senior managers, to provide input on key decisions as we go forward. So this is a new structure, as I mentioned, and I want to briefly go through each of the assistant directors. So Assistant Director for Social Equity, Nikatris Perkins. She is new to the agency and already doing a fantastic job and really focuses on that strategic area that we're trying to align to improve and continue to expand on social equity aspect of not just who we are as an agency, but the decisions we make. Assistant Director for Revenue, Finance, and Compliance is Travis Brower. Mr. Brower has been clearly foundational for our agency. He is the one that really understands all of the working parts, quite honestly, of our past and what we need going forward. We're really lucky to have Mr. Brower kind of leading those efforts for revenue and finance. Lindsay Baker, Assistant Director for Government and External Relations. Ms. Baker has been fantastic across the board and really helped us, especially over in the building when we need to continue to maintain those relationships and build upon the work that was done in House Bill 2017. And she is now leading that effort as well as our external relations effort. So again, trying to bring some synergy and alignment to all of the things that we do as an agency. And then finally, last but not least, Mr. Cooper Brown, who you all knew before as the OTC Chief of Staff, but now is leading our operations section, which is all elements of our operational elements for the agency. Next slide. So there have been a lot of changes. Clearly, we started just now with the executive strategy team, and we have now, in addition to those changes and those leaders at the top, we now have many new leaders that have joined the ODOT family, and we will be welcoming them into new roles and have been for some time. I want to take the time, to make sure that you know who those folks are and what their role is, and recognize the faces as we go forward. Next slide. So starting first in our delivery and operations section. So Delivery and Operations Division Administrator, Ms. Karen Rowe. She has served at the Colorado Department of Transportation. She brings 25 years of transportation management, engineering design, construction, programming, and communication experience. We were lucky to have her accept us, especially during these times of pandemic, and so she's diving in, learning her new role, as well as recognizing that in this COVID environment, it's different right now, and she's doing a great job of really trying to get out and see people, but in the socially distanced way. We're really happy to have Karen on the team. Next slide. Next is our Public Transportation Division Administrator. Karen Criswell has stepped into that role. She has been with ODOT since 2014, so while she's not new to ODOT, she's certainly new to her current role. And she began her work as a regional transit coordinator for the Portland Metropolitan Region, and then as the legislative coordinator. Most recently, she was project manager for the implementation of the Oregon Statewide Transportation Improvement Fund. Karen, I've had the pleasure of working with her for quite some time, and I won't say how long because that will date us, but I will say that we're excited to have her in her new role in public transportation, which is also carrying a new division name. Next slide. I mentioned before that we're talking about new ways of doing business. We're talking about adapting to a future that we've really been tasked with looking at by not just our commission, but by our friends in the public. And that really has culminated in the establishment of a climate office for ODOT. So Ms. Amanda Peets is our director of the ODOT Climate Office. She's been with us for over 12 years, most recently working as the Active Transportation Section Manager and the Multimodal Investment Program, and recently learned that Amanda was an archaeologist before coming to ODOT. The Climate Office was formed to help us change culture in how we reduce Oregon's carbon footprint, decarbonizing the system, help meet the state greenhouse gas reduction goals, and how to adapt to a changing climate that we're already seeing the impacts of. Currently, the Climate Office is focusing on wildfires. Amanda has a tough job ahead of her to balance the climate and other needs as we shift that agency culture. This is an exciting part of ODOT, and I'm happy to have, and we are all happy to have Amanda in this role. And it's a big task in front of her, especially as we start to transition to something that is relatively new for us as an agency. Next slide. I'm sure you've all seen by now that we are continuing and starting again work on the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program. We have jointly hired, we being Washington State Department of Transportation and ODOT, we have jointly hired a single program administrator to lead all of the efforts for that program. It's a Herculean effort in front of him, but Mr. Greg Johnson, with his 38 years of transportation experience, and who is very passionate about infrastructure, his family, and importantly, Detroit Lions football. We'll try not to hold that against him. Greg is in a unique position of representing both DOTs and really trying to move that program forward. Like I said, it's a big effort. We have funding coming in from both WashDOT and ODOT to really advance the replacement efforts for the Interstate Bridge. And we are really excited to have Greg on board, and he's already jumped in again during this new space of COVID and really trying to figure out how best to manage and lead from those, from that level, and he's doing a fantastic job. We're really happy that Greg is here. Next slide. So as we start to think about next steps and how we adapt to an ever-changing transportation system, we have to recognize that mobility within our urban centers, and not just one, but certainly we have one major urban center that we have to think of. Mobility within our urban centers is extremely important to ODOT. We have a single system, and that system doesn't just represent what we do on our portion of the system, but it's how it complements other elements, whether it's connections to pedestrian facilities, connections to bicycle facilities, connections to transit, and our multimodal connection. All of those are really important to what we implement as a system overall. I'm happy to describe Mr. Brendan Finn as the director of ODOT's first urban mobility office. He came into his role in March of this year. Many of you will recognize him as the transportation policy advisor for Governor Kate Brown. But previous to that, he served 19 years at the city of Portland. And while I look at that and say 19 years, he doesn't look nearly old enough. Brendan brings a significant experience to kind of lead efforts for the Urban Mobility Office in an effort really to address congestion management in the metropolitan area, incorporate equity and climate goals that are different from what we have maybe done in the past, and really manage and lead projects within that Urban Mobility Office, projects such as the I-5 Rose Quarter project, the I-205 Abernathy Bridge project, and oversight of the toll program. So his hands are full, and we're excited to have Mr. Finn on board. Next slide. A couple of other faces with the Urban Mobility Office. Clearly one is a face that many of you have known, and that's Ms. Della Mosier, the Deputy Director of the Urban Mobility Office. She brings 20 years of transportation public works experience, most recently coming out of Bend. In January of this year, though, she transitioned into her deputy role and onboarded 16 new faces over the past 9 months. Most of the Urban Mobility Office employees are new to ODOT, and this is their first fall for them, so welcome. The next is Lucinda Broussard. Lucinda is new to the agency, again, coming in very unique times, and in fact, doing a fantastic job already, bringing her 20 years of transportation experience and transportation management as the leader of our toll program. She spent a decade at WashDOT starting their Good to Go toll program and is looking to design toll system that has a customer focus from the roadside through the service transactions. Lucinda is bringing a significant background and understanding in what it means to start up and implement toll systems and congestion management. We're really excited to have her on board and bring that expertise. And she's already, like I said, doing a fantastic job. Together, these people are working to take ODOT where, frankly, no DOT has ever gone before, and that is alternative delivery and congestion pricing in the metro areas across the state. So a significant task in front of her, as well as the rest of the Urban Mobility Office team, and we're really excited for the work that they've already begun. Next slide. We have a new face in our information systems. So our Chief Information Officer, Mark Sauer, he came on just recently. His wife and he moved from Hawaii to the Portland area in 2008 after retiring from the Navy. For the past 12 years, he's worked in senior leadership roles, managing teams of IT for manufacturing and financial companies. And he's looking and already building strong relationships across ODOT to help align ISP's service with the business strategy, goals, and objectives, and building a more effective governance structure to inform and guide IT decisions. Something interesting that I just recently learned about Mark is that he and his family recently became members of the only water ski show team in the Pacific Northwest. And I'm looking forward to pictures of that at some point, Mark. Mark, welcome aboard. We're glad to have you as we transition into new efforts in our IT world and our IT space for our system. Next slide. Many of you already know Ms. Stephanie Coons. She has been with ODOT since March of 2011 and most recently working at DMV in the Field Services Group as their lead. She has served as a member of ODOT's Agency Leadership Board. As of July this year, Stephanie started a 6-month rotation as ODOT's Chief Human Resources Office Director, and as of last week was officially, and you may have seen the announcement come today, was officially appointed as Chief Human Resource Director. We will work to recruit for Stephanie's position back at DMV by the end of the year, and I have to say that I've really appreciated Stephanie's attention to detail as well as her passion and results-focused mentality as she emphasizes equity and inclusion in the work that we're doing going forward. We are very happy to have her in this critical role. She's already, again, making a significant impact to all of the things that are really important to us as we move forward. Next slide. So as exciting as it is to have new leadership and new leaders doing great things for our agency, it's clear that that sometimes comes with others that have decided that it's time for them to move on to other efforts. So recently announcing their retirements, Ms. Jerry Bohard, our Policy Data and Analysis Division Administrator, and Mr. Tom McClellan, our DMV Administrator. Both of these outstanding leaders have led amazing careers at ODOT. Let me start first with Jerry. Jerry's been with ODOT since 1999 and has truly made an impact. She's left her fingerprint on things such as technology, data, really spearheading much of the intermodal Oregon effort and the planning section for the entire agency. Jerry's leadership will be missed, and I personally have had a lot of significant conversations with Jerry over the last 2 years. And while I'm sad to see her go, I'm very excited for her and the opportunities that lie ahead for her. Jerry, thank you very much for your service. Mr. McClellan started his career with ODOT in 1983 as a college intern. I recently learned about a race that he ran as well, that he was on the losing end of all the way back in, I think it was 3rd grade, if I remember correctly, and I'm sure he'll correct me if that's wrong. But Tom has a long history within our great state. He's truly risen to the challenges that he has faced as DMV administrator, most recently successfully implementing the driver services, the Oliver system, and the rollout of Real ID and driver's licenses for all. Tom and his team also responded quickly and effectively to the COVID pandemic and really moved us forward as we think about how best we serve Oregonians. Tom, you will be missed as well. We are really ecstatic about the work that you have done. You're leaving DMV in a good place, and thank you very much for your service. I want to thank both of you for your combined 58 years of service serving the great state of Oregon and all of ODOT. Next slide. Before we go on to our next presenter, I want to take a moment and express just a special thank you for the work crews and what you're doing out in the field right now. This year brought significant change, not just in organizational approach, not just in new leadership, not just in transition of some of the leaders that have really carried us to this point and those that we've stood on the shoulders of as we've gotten here. But then in early 2020, clearly we were all hit with the COVID pandemic and adapted very, very quickly into a reality that we see today, much like the platform that we're on right now, really moving from something that was several hundred in a remote work environment to a few thousand. My hat's off to all of you that have really helped us get there. You pair that with all of the other, whether it's the other issues that we've been dealing with across the agency and across the state of Oregon, whether that is the influence of the social disparities that we've been experiencing for decades coming to a head, or frankly, what is right in front of us now, which is the wildfire efforts. The wildfire has had a dramatic impact. This is the worst wildfire season that we've seen in our state for over 100 years. A special thank you goes out to all who have been adapting in this environment, and specifically on the wildfire portion, because it's the most prominent right in front of us right now, is how we respond and we get people back to work, how we get people back to a home, and how we help Oregonians get back on their feet. I have to say I was not just humbled, but almost in awe as I was visiting some of the crews out in the wildfire damaged areas, some of them having lost their homes and yet still reporting back to work to support their community, support their ODOT, and support their state of Oregon. Just a tremendous testament to leadership and dedication and work ethic, which is what makes me proud to come to work every day. I really want to express my condolences to any of you who have been personally impacted by any of the events that I just described. And I recognize that we will not necessarily know the impacts of all of the things that we're dealing with in 2020 for some time. I appreciate your leadership. I appreciate what you are all doing. I can't thank you enough. And I wish I could put my finger on just one or two things, but frankly, there's too many to count as it relates to all that you've been doing. So with that, I've taken too much time, but I want to pass it off to Ms. Karen Rowe, our new Delivery and Operations Division Administrator, to tell us more about how we've been engaged in responding to the wildfires. Thank you for all that you do.
Thank you, Chris. That's a very nice introduction, and I feel very honored to be part of the ODOT team. It's been a challenging beginning to my time at ODOT. As Chris mentioned, I've been here since April of this year, and I came from the Colorado Department of Transportation, retired there in March, and started here in April. I'm excited and honored to be part of the ODOT team. These fires have shown great courage of many of the employees, and I'm very proud to see what they've done, but it's also very heartbreaking to see the impact on the beautiful state of Oregon, and also for the people of Oregon. As many residences, as you'll see, were impacted by these fires. Next slide, please. So I wanted to give you an overall view of, the wildfires. Many of you, of course, lived through this. We're part of it. It's just amazing when you look at, though, how much of the state was on fire at one time. There were somewhere between 35 and 38 fires going at one time. You can see at the peak, we had 244 miles closed, as many as 10 highways impacted. We're still working on the trees. We're still assessing the signs, 10 miles of actual guardrail, and we're looking at the pavement damage in many areas. One of the fires, I'm not going to go over the Echo Mountain Complex fire that was out on Highway 18, and then also down near on I-5 in the southern part of the state, we have the Alameda fire, which I'll talk about. Next slide, please. So as the fire started September 8th, we started to look at the damage to the highways, and as the fire started to move away from the highways, we started to think about what do we do to open them up, because we only have so many east-west routes. So the Agency Operations Center came up with these maps. As you can see on the left, this was September 15th. We're trying to highlight the east-west corridors that were closed and those that were open, so that the traveling public could really see what route they could take versus the ones that normally they would and are now closed. So as you see, the level A was full closure. They were evaluating the damage. Sometimes it was active fires still going. If you look to the right, you can see how quickly on October 6th, our teams were able to go through and evaluate the damage, take down the clearly hazardous trees, and start opening things up. We realized that it wasn't just a clear open the highway type situation. So they categorized them as level A, level B, level C, level D. So critical services were level B, get the power companies in there. Level C is partial opening, maybe let the property owners in. And level D is maybe piloted cars, but the highways are open. Next slide, please. I was lucky enough last week to go down and visit this area. This is the Archie Creek fire between Glide and Diamond Creek. We have a maintenance facility there at Steamboat. This was 4 fires that actually combined into one. The first fire started near Glide. Some people evacuated to the east, and then another fire started, a few more fires started to the east, and then people had to evacuate back towards Glide. Or go over the mountain the other way. Our Steamboat facility, nearly was caught in the middle there. Luckily, we were able to get out, and the fire came very close to that facility, which we share with the Forest Service. But it's still standing now. If you go to the next slide, this is Highway 138. They're still piloting cars through. So these were pictures I took last week. The one with the vehicle on the right is for the piloting car effort. So we're one-waying traffic through to make sure that they safely get through it. There's a lot of debris on the side of the road, and there's still fires, or still trees burning in that area. And on the left, you can see the devastation to that wildlife area. Next slide. So this one, I think, is heartbreaking in how many people's homes, how many businesses were impacted. This one was very dramatic. It started off of Interstate 5 between Ashland and Talent. What closed the interstate was the fire. So the fire approached the interstate, and Jeremiah Griffin told me a story that he was coming south and saw cars coming at him. And so he realized cars were going the wrong way on the interstate because the fire was coming across the interstate. So they jumped into action and made sure they got closures on the interstate. quickly in place and were able to evacuate the towns of Talent and Phoenix. As you can see, there's on the photo on the right, you can see the plane dumping. They had a lot of fire retardant that they dumped on the towns of Talent and Phoenix. Next slide, please. And just one note on the other slide for Talent in Phoenix, 3,000 residences were impacted, were burned down by that. We had road closures in place that were very emotional for the residents, and our team worked with the National Guard there to make sure that people who lived in that area could safely, but in an organized manner, get access to their residence and see the damage that they endured. So it wasn't only the fire, but it was afterwards that they really worked on getting people through there safely. As we move up north, this fire is east of Eugene and Springfield, the Holiday Farm Fire. This one was rather devastating. As you can see, our highway is right in the middle, and you can see the pavement damage there. Pretty significant. Again, lots of guardrail, lots of signs. I know this one was heading to the west, and Sunny Chickering was evacuated during the fire also, as well as, many of our employees were impacted by this fire and others, and were still on the job while the fire was impacting their homes or while they were being evacuated. Next slide. You can see a lot of the damage to the guardrails. The teams have gotten into place, have really worked hard on getting the trees down. I'll talk to that a little bit more. And the fires are still going in a lot of these places. You can see that they're smoldering. When I was down at the Archie Creek fire, you could still see there's firefighting efforts in place. As the wind picks up, those flames can sometimes spark new flames going around. Next slide. So I'm going to go over the Riverside Fire, which has Highway 224, the Beachy Creek, and as you can see, the Beachy Creek and the Lions Head Fire combined here, and so it really impacted a large area. Our Detroit maintenance facility was evacuated during this. We thought for sure it had burned down in the fire. However, the structure is still standing. There were some structures on the outlying parts of the property that have burned down. However, right now our maintenance facility there in Detroit is still standing. However, many of the employees in this area have had their homes lost in the fires and had to evacuate. It was a pretty scary time in the middle of the night there to get out during the fires. Next slide. So here's a little fact that I learned during this process. ODOT has 3 foresters with over 80 years of combined experience in their field. They direct tree removal. So ODOT's foresters are certified arborists and have extensive experience in hazard tree identification. They really went along all the corridors. They summarized the extent of the damage, and they provide recommendations for removal. So many of our staff are, what I've learned is, I think level 4 tree fallers, excuse me if I'm not using the exact terminology, out there. And we hired a lot of contractors to come in and help us remove the immediate hazardous trees. But those foresters help us identify where those are. So we're removing the immediate highway hazards in order to open the highways in response to requests from Fire Incident Command. However, we still have a long way to go. We have a lot of those trees that are near the highways that could come down during winter as the snow falls. So we now have the trees down. We're working on removing them off the side of the highways and building back the guardrail, replacing signs, and fixing other damaged areas. Next slide. So Highway 224 was impacted by the Riverside Fire. This is between Estacada and Ripplebrook. Again, our Estacada maintenance facility was evacuated. They went over to Sandy off of I-84. This is the fire that caused the evacuation in Molalla. These photos were taken Thursday, September 17th. trees are still smoldering. You can see it's pretty, this highway goes through the Forest Service area, so many, many trees. If you go to the next slide. You can see they have very tight working conditions. It's a very narrow highway. So we're still in the process of making sure to clear those trees out and have that highway open. Next slide. So another consequence of these fires is it has burned down our 2 communication towers. The towers were actually damaged, but the buildings that controlled the communications were burned down. This was in Santiam Canyon and McKenzie. There's a video on social media that I didn't, again, it's tough to play video over these types of platforms, but it shows we have a camera on one of our communications buildings, and it's quite amazing to watch. It's a little eerie and scary. We have a camera inside the communications building and one outside, so you can see the approaching fire, the ash, and as it gets closer, kind of the melting of the camera lens. It's a little bit spooky to watch, but we're able to capture, unfortunately, its destruction on camera. So these are key too. You recognize when these burn down, then our communications get challenged. So during the recovery efforts, I know communication vehicles were brought in order to make sure to have our radios functional or cell phones. So we are able to communicate as we recover during the fires and after. Next slide. So I've shown a few pictures, shown the main impacts to our highway system. Many of our crews were out there manning road closures, working 24/7. It was quite a coordinated effort behind the scenes, and as one ODOT, there was a lot of other things going on. So we initiated the Agency Operations Center for ODOT. Mac Lind was there with Lucy Moore, and they were able to start a cadence of organizing resources around the state. So as you can imagine, with so many districts impacted, and even Region 4 and Region 5 had their own little fires going on, but they were also here to help us with resources. Region 4 helped the Archie Creek fire by stopping traffic on the east side. So as you can see, the main operations center is located at the TLC building in Salem. So we had a small amount of people there. Normally, Agency Operations Center is meant to bring everyone together in one room, but with COVID, we decided that was not a good idea. So we had a limited amount of people in that area, and then virtually we would gather people together. So twice a day for 2 weeks at 9 a.m. and 3 p.m., they had regional calls where they'd get the regional staff, district managers together to see who needed what and what was going on. Then we had a larger agency cross-division meeting from 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. So as you can see, we have DMB there, Amy Ramsdale from Commerce and Compliance, all the regions. You can see Region 4, Region 5. We have our communications person there, Darren Weaver for Fleet. So we were, again, coordinating on what was going on. Amy was talking about permits in order to get vehicles in there to help fight the fires. It was quite a great moment to see everyone coordinating and talking and making sure we had things covered. And Region 5 was ready to send people over as needed to help relieve some of our staff after those long hours. Later, after the fires were not quite as, and the closures weren't quite as intense, we went down to once a day, we would have these meetings at 10 a.m. Next slide. Really, this was a multi-agency response. As we realized this grew bigger, the governor declared the major disaster. We had the National Guard come in. They helped us coordinate with the road closures. The picture here was on 22E. So ODOT was out there with the National Guard, making sure that we had coordinated efforts, we could communicate together. We were partners with law enforcement during this effort. Christina Leclerc, who is our Office of Emergency Management. She would go to the State Emergency Coordination Center in Salem and help represent ODOT with the various coordinated efforts. The Emergency Operations Center pictured here on the right-hand side there is in Jackson County. And we coordinate with the Emergency Operations Centers throughout the state. So each county may have their own, and we would have people from ODOT at each of those, as well as Christina at the statewide. Next slide, please. So here's an example, another example of one ODOT though. Here's transit response. So, you know, response is more than just highway maintenance. The transit agencies, I know Karen Criswell was helping coordinate with many of them. They helped evacuate and individuals, as well as Rogue Valley Transit District was providing transportation to evacuees and added 3 new routes to help patchwork routes closed by the fire. Rogue Valley Transit District, so that's down by Medford, doesn't normally service the fairgrounds since it's so remote, but they started a shuttle service to get dispatch people to the fairgrounds where they could get information and assistance on a variety of topics. TriMet helped move firefighters around the region and also helped move people in Clackamas County senior facilities who were in the fire's path. Chariots in Salem has a number of operators who live in the canyon. They assisted regional services in clearing congregate care out of Mill City. In Columbia Area Transit worked with Clackamas County transit agencies to provide drivers and buses. Grant County sent Western Oregon bottled water and other items to distribute to those who need it. So that was really nice to see as we're all coming together to help with the coordinated effort. Next slide. Again, you know, a lot of our employees were impacted by the fires. We wanted to make sure to do something with it for them. We put together a Facebook site off our state business website. So Kelly Bruce is helping coordinate some efforts there, and we're still looking to see who needs what. So everyone was reaching out like, if you need a place for your horses to stay, I got a corral here. If you need a place for your dogs or for your cats, you know, we put this Facebook community together and really tried to make sure that people knew where they could rely on other people to help out. It was a really great thing to see as we came together to help support each other. With one ODOT, as you can see, DMV was also there to help for evacuees who lost their driver's license and didn't have a way to, you know, show ID. They were there to help provide a way to get a temporary driver's license. It's just very important. You know, tomorrow at 10, Christina Leclerc is going to talk about emergency preparedness along with Lucy Moore. It's things you just don't think about. You know, take a picture of your driver's license, make sure you have those numbers. If you lose it, you know, you just don't know all that information, and you just didn't think you would have to be in that situation. So I'm really proud to see everyone pull together, see how we could help. Construction projects had to shut down. There were smoke levels that were in the hazardous. We would coordinate with Randy in support services to see what buildings we needed to keep open and which ones to close. It was a really great coordinated effort, and Team ODOT did a great job of being prepared, helping work with our partners, whether it was transit, permits, trucking industry. It was amazing. So next slide. I would like to say thank you. Chris mentioned this. This picture is of our Oregon State Trooper, Jeff Johnson, and ODOT's maintenance person, Tim Ackery of Central Point. They saved this American flag that survived the Alameda fire in Phoenix. Trooper Johnson served in the Marine Corps and helped with traffic control. The flag was given back to the owner of the Phoenix Animal Hospital, who is going to keep it as a reminder. This is just showing how great it is to work together. We are stronger, we're more resilient, We got a long road to recovery. I would say, you know, it's at least a year or more to make sure that our highways are safe, repaired, those trees, a lot of trees still to look at, to take down safely so they don't fall on the traveling public or our employees or anyone else. So it's, we're still here, we're still fighting, we're still recovering, and I'm just very proud and thankful to be part of One ODOT as we move forward in this space. It's really amazing to hear all the stories. I couldn't share them all. I'll be getting out more and seeing more of what we have challenged on some of our highways. And I know Chris Strickler and Cooper Brown have been out there meeting with people and looking at unfortunately, the devastating loss that we have and the long road to recovery. So thank you, everyone, as we move forward in this new phase.
Great, thank you, Karen. Next up is our keynote speaker, Nikatris Perkins. Nikatris is a Wisconsin native and the new Assistant Director of Social Equity. Nikatris has 20 years of experience working in nonprofit, social enterprise, and corporate environments with an emphasis on leading teams toward equitable outcomes. A talented facilitator who is a catalyst in creating brave spaces, she promotes confidence and identity and offers tools to navigate the trauma of racial, economic, accessibility, and health inequities that show up in the places we live, work, and play. As Assistant Director, Nikatris is focused on both our internal and external stakeholders agency-wide to think about how we prioritize diversity, equity, and inclusion by identifying and addressing systemic barriers to ensure all Oregonians benefit from transportation services and investments. We are happy to have you as part of the team, Nikatris. Nikatris will be answering your questions after her presentation, so please take the time to submit questions via Slido. Please join me in welcoming Nikatris Perkins to present One ODOT, the power of all in.
The Greek philosopher Terence offers, "I am human, so nothing human can be alien to me." I am coming here today to talk to you as a human that has experienced the world in an able body, a human that has received an amazing K-12 education, a human who has been spit at and beat up for being a Black woman in the wrong part of Kentucky. I am a human that intimately knows what it's like to have no money and insecure housing, as well as to have abundance and more than enough to share. Over the last 6 months, I have been honored, amazed, excited, and been met with disdain, questions, and commitment here at ODOT. In my first weeks here, Troy Costales shared that over his 35 years of service, he's learned that people have champions on every team at ODOT. Champions you've never met and champions you'll never meet. What a beautiful understanding of 35 years of service here. As a person who moved to Oregon during the pandemic, followed by a very clear reminder that some people hate and fear humans that are different than them, followed by catastrophic wildfires, all in a place I had never been for more than 48 hours, I am honored to serve, and I realize that we are simultaneously figuring all of these things out and have no idea how we are going to recover. And yet, there are amazing champions. Champions like the ones who advocated for social distancing and mask requirements because they had health vulnerable coworkers in offices. Champions like Cam McGinnis, who from week 1 of my service has asked me questions, offered feedback, shared resources, and has been very clear about the fact that we can operationalize, institutionalize, dig deep into social equity in his Region 5 and in every corner of Oregon. Champions like Lisa Letney, who saw a moment that required showing appreciation as she organized ODOTians and got care packages to those who are working on the front lines in the most unimaginable conditions and the largest and most damaging wildfires Oregon has ever seen. Oregon is brimming, overflowing with champions. So this morning, I want to acknowledge the difficulty that people have faced and are facing before 2020 started and surely over the last 10 months. I may never know those difficulties, I may never understand them, but I do empathize and I stand with you as we move towards recovery. I appreciate your service, so I want to make sure I tell you that. To those who are listening and to those who are unable to listen live, so when you see somebody later, tell them Nakatra said thank you for all that you do. You are appreciated, and your commitment to making Oregon a place that people want to live, work, and play. And lastly, I want to ask you to join me in stretching our capacity at ODOT to be all in, stretching to be a champion of an agency, a champion in the enterprise, one that can only be made of champions. So we're already in a very good place. Chadwick Boseman, most known for his portrayal of Jackie Robinson and the Black Panther on the big screen, talked about his awe of superheroes, especially those presented in Marvel movies. Sure, they have an ability, they can throw webs, they can make storms, but there's always a highlight of who they are as human beings. Who is the human inside the suit? Who is the human that has the power? I will argue that humans' greatest power is the ability to create relationships, the power of gathering around shared value and vision, the power of community, and belonging to a whole that is interested in who you are. So interested that they want you present and growing on their team. They want to know that human being inside the powerful suit of engineering and planning and maintenance and management. That power would shift ODOT's narrative and assist us in making generational impact we can be proud of. We will become the super champions for Oregonians that are committed to being all in. Now, all means a lot of things. It's an adverb, it's a noun, it's like 4 different types of language, okay? But I'm talking about all the alls. I'm talking about all like as much as possible. I'm talking all like the score is 3 all, so we're all doing the same thing. I'm talking about the all like the whole of one's energy and interest. I'm talking about all, the whole quantity of a group and thing, all in, all the alls. I'm talking all 4,743 people that work at ODOT. Can you imagine harnessing the superpower of all of those ODOT champions? But how? How do we harness that type of collective power? Well, I suggest 3 things. 1, I suggest we bring our expertise and our experience every day and every time. 2, I suggest that we settle, and when I say settle, I mean like cozy settling, wrapped up, Netflix and chill, quarantine with someone we love, settle in our own discomfort. And I suggest that we make space. One of my first, I would say like big girl jobs was the assistant director of pre-college programming at a university. And I was very excited because I had done a lot of preparation around management of large teams, management of large budgets, and I was just excited to be able to go into a space, talk about equity, talk about education, talk about ability, and really make sure that once we recruited a large group, we retained a large group, and that this large group was able to meet the mission of the program. For the first 2 years I was there, I did that day in and day out. And I was meeting every goal. I was exceeding goals. I was raising more money than had ever been raised. I had parents involved. I had community involved. I had donations. And the end of my second summer, my supervisor sat me down and let me know that he was talking to me because he had been contemplating letting me go. Immediately, just in shock, a tear was rolling down my face. I could not believe I've met all my goals, and I've never been fired from anywhere. I take great pride in doing my job well. And I was like, I don't understand how this could happen. I've never had a bad review, and I'm doing everything I'm supposed to be doing. He talked about the fact that I was so focused on what I'm doing that I often my class was doing well, my budget was doing well, but there were people in the offices trying to do the same things I was doing that weren't as successful. And when I was in meetings, I would report out, but I wouldn't say how. People asked me questions, I gave them the exact information, but never dug any deeper. I was basically on the train to being fired because I wasn't saying something. I wasn't building relationships. I wasn't managing up and explaining to him how I was getting things done. I wasn't managing over and talking to my coworkers about getting things done. And that was just as important as my metrics because it would increase everyone's metrics. So gone are the days when we can keep our heads down and focus on making the widget that we were hired to make. Humans are dynamic and complex creatures. We've created systems and cultures that have uplifted and have also oppressed. We figured out catalysts and we figured out containers. As ODOT, we need to figure out just distribution of benefits and of burden in every project, program, plan, and that would take all of our expertise and experiences. Our ability to learn and to unlearn, to fight against our own misinformation, and to heighten our expertise to create and construct socially responsible generational impact is something we all must do. The decisions we make daily are too big to sit quietly focused on our own metrics. We all have to be ready to sit down and talk and be eager to listen. We need to bring our past and engage with coworkers and stakeholders to build a future that leans on the flourishing of everyone who lives in Oregon. We all have to come ready with our experience and our expertise. Secondly, I think we need to get cozy in our own personal discomfort. And when I say all of these, I do mean we. I'm exempt from none of them. I think that if everything I do and say makes perfect sense to everyone around me and aligns with everything we've ever done, I'm missing something. That type of comfort means I'm not learning. It means I'm not growing, which are two things we have to do in order to live out our mission. Remember, we're trying to connect people and organize communities and an economy that can thrive, and that can't happen in comfort. Another job that I had, I was charged with managing about 50 young professionals as they entered the workforce. So I spent time with them, and I spent time with community stakeholders as well as they had supervisors in position. It was like a mentorship program almost, and I was really helping them understand budget. I was helping them understand policy, job descriptions, writing things out, and managing and coaching their own teams. Everything was going fine, and there was a day where one of the people on my team came to me and was like, I'm really struggling, and I went right into coaching mode. Okay, so let's talk about your plan. We have all of these things laid out. These are your goals. This is what you said we were going to do last week. I see you met them. You've really been moving well. All the reports from community stakeholders and from your supervisors have been good. We did a 360 about 6 months before I met with him, and all of these things were going well, and so I was really confused. I'm still moving in coaching mode, and he paused and was like, this is exactly what I'm not talking about anything you're saying. I'm really struggling managing up. As a transgender person, I'm constantly being met with a barrier where people are asking me questions about how I am, who I am, and why I am, instead of some of the things that I do. And it's not that I don't want to have those conversations, it's that I could make a presentation about a fundraising method, and people ask, when we're fundraising, should we say you are a man or a woman? Not a horrible question, but one that shouldn't be happening in this space. I will admit, in that moment, I was not prepared to coach in that space, to answer any questions. I had absolutely no idea what to say. So in my own discomfort, it's I don't know. Let's work it out. I've never had to figure out how to coach or manage around this. I have no idea why anybody would ask those questions. I don't know anything about this. So this is what we're going to do. You tell me what you need to do well, what support you need from me, what you need from community stakeholders, what you need from your supervisors and your peers. That became the middle of the plan. My discomfort was around the fact that I'm hired to do this thing that I cannot do, because I'm working with someone who I've never worked with and has a perspective that I've never considered. Those things are uncomfortable. Those things mean you have to say, I don't know. You have to ask questions. You have to be able to be absolutely and completely wrong multiple times. That discomfort to make someone else feel comfortable in a space is necessary for us to move forward. We are going to have to be uncomfortable in order for us to be the ODOT we say we are. What I know for sure may actually be untrue. Something that you know for sure will not resonate with everyone. And everything that we do will definitely not be able to be applied in the same way. Discomfort is necessary for our success. I'm not trying to catapult you into anxiety or leave you on a mountain with no map, but we must nudge ourselves past our comfort zone. We need to have dialogue with someone or about something that forces us to think about our unknowns, about our misinformation, and pushes us against what we've always to believe to be unwavering truth. And finally, we need to make space. Oregon may not be one of the most racially and ethnically diverse states in the union. I mean, just from pure numbers, that is a fact, right? It's just not. Also, according to the 2018 American Community Survey, over half the state identifies as female. There are almost 1 million professionals in the first 10 years of their career, 750,000 senior citizens, over 500,000 people who identify as non-white, and 600,000 people who are living with a disability. We have to make space for everyone. We need to foster a culture where everything we do does not need to be translated into cisgendered, middle-aged, middle-class, able-bodied, white male English in order to be heard or correct. Instead, we need to curate spaces. And so curating means that we're gonna have to, play some things and step back and look at them and say, oh, that's not gonna work, let's go back and do it again. It's not gonna be as easy as some of the things we've been able to build on our roads and in our networks. A queer, Spanish-speaking Black immigrant in the first decade of their career could easily be an expert in one of ODOT's rooms, and they do not need validation from anyone else. They need to be able to stand alone in that and be a champion, and we need to be able to acknowledge them as a champion. And space for that still needs to be made. When I was growing up, and actually still right now, I could not stand shopping at all. Mostly because it was like the cool thing that you did in high school, and all your friends go shopping, you meet at the mall, and everybody's shopping, and people are going into all of these stores that are so, so amazing. And the reality is, in all of these stores, most things did not fit me. I'm kind of tall, so things are high water, sleeves are too short, and the older I got, the more I grew, the more I continued also to grow. So then we got to a point where things didn't fit at all. Like I would be shopping for hours and maybe get earrings. And people are excited with bags. I'm holding purses and coats and all types of ridiculous things that I didn't want to go, but it was the activity that my friends liked. We need to make space for people who don't like what we like to still feel like they belong here. For people who may need a different size, who may need a different space, who may need a different table to be able to bring that. Oftentimes when we talk about making space, we say we're gonna, make space at the table. We're gonna pull a chair up. But in making space, it might mean that we need to get up from our chairs. It might mean that we need to destroy the table that we're sitting at and build one that makes more sense and that's more accessible. It might mean that somebody should pull another table up to our table. We need to be able to build a space that allows everyone to be able to thrive at ODOT. 2020 has been almost like a window. It's giving us a reminder to the amount of champions that ODOT possesses, right? These 10 months, people have been hurt, they've been uplifted, they've been moved, and they've been shaped, inspired, they've had a lot of questions, and we've been held accountable and held to task all simultaneously. So I say that we use this moment as a step stool. What can we do to band together, to offer our expertise, to settle in our discomfort, and to make space for all of us to be the champion agency that this enterprise and this state needs for every Oregonian to flourish? Thank you.
Thank you, Nikatris. We do have some time to take some questions, and I wanted to, oh, great, there's the reminder on how to do that at www.slido.com. So presenters, do you have some questions that I can pose to Nikatris? Bear with me just a moment, Nikatris. Oh, here we go. So first question, what do you think is ODOT's greatest challenge with acceptance of others, and how do you hope to change that?
That is a great question. I think that ODOT's greatest challenge in acceptance to others is that we have historically accepted others by saying nothing. And so it was like, I didn't tell people they couldn't be here. I have never said that someone isn't welcomed, but there's a feeling, I can feel like I'm not welcomed even if you don't say that. And additionally, there are a lot of people who haven't been actively welcomed. So that's a shift, right? And nothing is consistent except for change. So it's going to be a change in how we welcome people and how we recruit people and how we talk to our coworkers and how we talk to our managers and how we talk to those we get to interact with as citizens. And so that is going to be a challenge because it is so different from we came to do a job, we're going to build, everybody does their individual part, and we watch whatever it is rise because we were in charge of something as a part of a larger team. We're going to have to talk and listen in ways that we're not used to doing.
Thanks, Nikatris. Another comment, well done, Nikatris. Are you having these kinds of tough conversations with your executive peers?
Yes, I am.
And say it, but would you care to elaborate?
Yes, we're having these conversations with peers and also having these conversations, I would say, with multiple management supervisors, division leaders, so that we can get to a point where we're having these conversations agency-wide. I don't want these conversations, and by these conversations, I mean conversations about discomfort, conversations about making space, conversations about perspective shift, or like thinking about what social identity or social equity even is. All of that is not going to be like this proclamation or announcement from me. So I want us to have the conversations as much as possible and practice having those conversations with people so that other people can have conversations with people. The goal is for it to ripple through the agency. And so no matter where you sit, if you're somebody who's ready to have a conversation, please have it so that it ripples in your direction too. And ripples in, when you drop a rock into a pond, it doesn't just go one way. It goes in the entire circle. So we would hope that these conversations are rippling in ways that there could be something that you're like, Nikatris, I'm with you, but you're not having a conversation in a way that I think makes sense. And have you ever thought about it this way? I welcome those conversations for me too, because we're all consistently and continually unlearning things and misinformation because we're alive and we hear different things all the time. So having it definitely with exec peers, having it at the ALB table, having it at the senior leadership group table, having it with social equity partners, having it with STAT teams, having it when I visit regions, so having it as much as I possibly can with as many people as I can.
Thank you. I think we have time for one or two more questions. How do we measure equity being applied in business processes? Any examples?
Yes, so there's a lot of different ways to do that. I think at ODOT, some ways that we'll think about them very particularly is when we think about like scoping or planning, we can lay an equity lens in terms of mapping. We can use GIS systems. We can think about the neighborhoods that we touch or don't touch. We can think about how we maintain some highways and what we don't do in the maintenance of some highways. It will be relationships with the municipalities that sometimes we might not be as excited all the ways to collaborate with everyone because collaboration is hard. But we need to be thinking about those things to ensure that we are thinking about climate and how do we make sure that trees are going back because that has long-lasting impact. What are we thinking about in terms of surface covering and materials? What are we thinking about in terms of who was asked when we are starting a project or doing a project? What are we thinking about in terms of how long it takes for people to be paid, a contractor or a subcontractor or a consultant or a subconsultant? So there's an equity lens for almost every business process and everything ODOT touches. And so I'm in the process of building those things out and including as many people as possible so that we can build those things out as a larger agency so that it lives everywhere. And we get to the point where our culture shifts, where equity is just a part of what we do, and we're always thinking about everyone and how everyone can thrive, and it's not something where we're checking off boxes or making sure we did the 3 steps, but instead it's just a part of how we maneuver.
Thank you. Let's do one more. What can individuals do to create safe places?
So I don't say two things about that. One is, it is almost impossible to create a safe space. And that's just because we all have misinformation, and we've all been taught things and heard things that we think make sense, and sometimes they don't land the way we would have hoped. But that doesn't mean that it's not a great place, right? So we need to create places where people can make mistakes. We need to make places where people are able to say, ooh, I didn't mean for it to land like that, and I'm going to shift it. And so some things that we can do, one, be open to correction, or people saying, like, I wish you would say it this way, or these are my pronouns, or I identify in this way, or I just said that, right? Like, we'll be in meetings sometimes and somebody will say something, and then if you've ever been in a meeting and someone else says the exact same thing you just said, to say, wow, that is what I was trying to say or just said. And as a person receiving that message, to say thank you for pointing that out, right? So to not move into a place where everybody's going, oh, sorry, because that's not necessary, and that doesn't create a place where we're going to thrive. But saying thank you, like, thank you for that feedback. Thank you for pointing that out to me. I didn't see it that way. So moving to a place where we say thank you instead of sorry, I think is very helpful in creating great spaces and making space for people. Another thing is really just speaking to people. I know that is something that we kind of feel everybody does, and it's also really interesting to do it in virtual context. But when people get on virtual and everybody just gets on, puts their head down and is waiting for the meeting to start, simply saying good morning to people and acknowledging their presence. That doesn't mean you have to go into banter and, oh, how did you like the game, and try to figure out how to do that. But just saying hi to people, acknowledging they are there, appreciating people for the contribution that they're making and things that they thought of that will help you do something that might not even be what you're talking about. So I think those are some of the ways that we can make space for people.
Thank you so much, Nikatris, and thank you to everyone who submitted questions. We'll also be taking questions for our next presentation, and so remember, that's www.slido.com and enter the event code #fallforum. A lot has happened this past year for the agency, and ODOT is in a period of transition. In May, ODOT and the Oregon Transportation Commission began developing a strategic action plan to focus the Commission's efforts on long-term vision development. This work is critical now more than ever as ODOT re-examines how it does work in light of COVID-19 and budget shortfalls, while continuing to deliver on House Bill 2017. This requires a clear articulation of vision, priorities, and goals in order to chart a path forward under the current circumstances. Please join me in welcoming our director and assistant directors to tell us more about the critical work being done and the path forward. Again, we'll have 15 minutes afterward to answer questions about the strategic action plan.
Thank you, Catherine. Well, good morning again, everybody. As we dive into this conversation, I'm really looking forward to the questions that might come and that will come as part of this. A couple of things as we start. One of the things when I came in this chair that was really clear to me and was clear through our commission interaction was that we have a lot going on, and you all know this. I mean, the agency is really tasked and sometimes burdened, depending upon the issue, with a lot of things to do, and sometimes they can feel absolutely in alignment with the things that are probably core to what we are about, and sometimes they feel almost like secondary or tangential. And one of the things that the commission was really focused on was how do we bring a strategic action plan alignment? So something that's a narrower window, something that's not a 20-year look ahead, but something that says what are the tangible outcomes that we hope to achieve in the near term that will demonstrate that we're living the values and the priorities that we think are important to us and that are shared. It's important to also recognize that shared piece, the shared aspect of a strategic action plan between ODOT as an agency and our commission, which has been demonstrating leadership through this moment and setting really clear expectations for us, and that's all 4,700 of us, not just me, not just the assistant directors, but everybody across the agency. There was also some confusion, frankly, about all of these different plans that we have that are all very important, and I don't discount any of them. In fact, I recognize that we all kind of have our piece in each of those plans. But we don't necessarily know how all of those culminate together. And when I say we, I'm kind of meaning maybe myself at times, but then our commission saying what are the crosswalk points. What are the connections? And yes, the transportation pun there for crosswalk points, my apology. But what are the connection points with each of these plans? And what do we create as far as actionable outcomes as part of these plans? And how does it then correlate with our priorities? And those priorities really focused on what do we want to be and what are we? So next slide. So the purpose of the discussion today is to really start talking about and create more space for conversation around the strategic action plan that we've been working on with the Commission and its components and tools and some of the things that we plan to carry forward. We'll talk about the strategic action plan development timeline. How did we get here is part of that. And then we'll also talk about the priorities and goals. You'll see on the screen that it's a 21 to 23 strategic outcome timeline. That's, again, intentional. How do we create a space where we're talking about these tangible outcomes and these things that we can really demonstrate to not just the Commission, but to our legislative audience, to our governor, to our public, to all of our peers in the industry? How do we demonstrate the outcomes that are really important, as opposed to maybe what we have at times is, well, we're really thinking about those things and they're really important to us, and we've got a plan that tells us how to get there. Again, not a discount to any of the plans we have because they're all extremely important, but this is really focused on a short-term duration intentionally to demonstrate those outcomes. And then we'll talk about next steps. What does this mean for all of us across the agency? Next slide. So as we talk about the strategic action plan and its components, we really are looking at a bit of a flow chart or a stepped process that we go through. So first, before you can really identify those measures or those things that you're achieving, you need to set your priorities in play. And so the priorities set direction. Your priorities then lead to goals as to how you establish priority focus areas and how do you achieve those priorities. How can you maybe differentiate amongst different things, and how do you reconcile and how do you bring a lens through your goals to say, am I or am I not meeting those priorities? From the goals, then, you have strategic outcomes and metrics. So this is a near-term performance expectation. So we can all consider this a little bit of our personal performance accountability and expectation approach because we're all part of this effort as we go forward. And then from the strategic outcomes and metrics, implementing actions. So steps towards those outcomes. The goal will be to create this management tool, a quarterly progress report that establishes timeframes for completing those key milestones and advance the conversation of the entire strategic action plan. What actions are we demonstrating that show progress? And then a reporting tool that tells everybody this is what we're about. And that reporting web dashboard provides periodic summaries of our performance results. It's a truth in lending approach. This is what we're working on. This is how we're doing towards that, and we'll report our successes and our failures as we go forward in that. And again, I'm not anticipating the failures. It's simply we'll report what we are able to accomplish, and we're moving towards that success metric. I'm really excited about the effort with the Commission. Next slide. So this wasn't just something thought up in a dark room somewhere. This has been an ongoing dialogue with our Commission, and frankly, some of this has been expectations that were established as I really began in my role and as the assistant directors began in their role. This has been on the Commission's mind, and I would say globally across the Commission's mind for quite some time. All of that development process and the priorities, goals, and strategic outcomes really came to a May 2020 OTC reviewing a draft of our priorities and goals. And I think we have more detail on that later on in the presentation. They contemplated, they evaluated, we helped them see what we might be able to accomplish, what we couldn't, what's important to us. And in July of 2020, the OTC approved the priorities and goals and provided some feedback on those implementing actions. Again, how do we create that accountability and that expectation as we go forward? September, OTC reviewed the 21-23 strategic outcomes, metrics, and implementing actions, and that's all in furtherance of an October discussion. So here we are, the very beginning of October, and in a week or two, we'll be having more conversation with the Commission to review and approve a 21-23 strategic action plan. Again, you can see the tangible outcome from the time frame from May to October is a truncated window compared to the way we would normally kind of create process within our agency. This is a truncated window that says the Commission's serious, they're interested, they're focused on those tangible outcomes, and look what they've accomplished since the May timeframe. So a lot has happened, not to mention all of the other things that you've all been dealing with as it relates to COVID, wildfire, et cetera. Next slide. We want to talk a little bit more about the strategic priorities. And we'll have some key messages on this, and then I'll hand it off to others to kind of walk through some of the detail. But our strategic priority areas are on the screen. One of the things we saw is that if we're not careful, we'll have 250, 350, 500 metrics and priority areas because everything's important, and it truly is. Everything we're doing is very important. And I don't discount any of that. And in fact, I'm amazed at how we're able to juggle all the importance and all the balls in the air at the same time. This is really aimed at trying to bring a strategic priority to a digestible set of priorities that we can then advance the ball and move things forward and recognize those tangible outcomes that I mentioned before. So we focus those strategic priority areas with our Commission and on three priority areas. First being equity. Prioritize diversity, equity, and inclusion by identifying and addressing systemic barriers to ensure all Oregonians benefit from transportation services and investments. And we'll have more discussion about that in just a moment. Modernizing the transportation system, or building a modern transportation system. Build, maintain, and operate a modern multimodal transportation system to serve all Oregonians, address climate change, and help Oregon communities and economies thrive. Now more than ever, we need to bring voice to all of these equity and priority areas. Sufficient and reliable funding is our last priority area, seeking sufficient and reliable funding to support a modern transportation system and a fiscally sound ODOT. Clearly, we've been having budget conversations across the agency, and we recognize that we need a bit of a diversity even in our revenue sources, and so you'll hear a little bit more about that as we go forward. Next slide.
Good morning again. This is Patrice. So if we could go back a slide. Oh, there was a slide in between. I'm looking for the equity priority and goals. So these are the equity priority goals. Dr. Strickler just went over priority as a whole. The four goals that we're really focused on are around culture, workforce, operation, and policy, where we're really looking at our internal spaces and what it looks like to ensure that our operations and policies create an informed culture that deliver authentic inclusivity for ODOT. The second one is economic opportunity. In this space, I want to point out some of the language. So we're looking to promote economic opportunity for Oregonians through transportation investments, including working with businesses owned by Black, Indigenous, people of color, also are most often referred to as BIPOC, women, and others who have been historically and are currently marginalized. I want to just for a second point to BIPOC because it's language that I think is new for a lot of people and newer in Oregon. It is being used throughout the state, and it does speak to not only the words you see, but often it also talks to Asian Pacific Islanders, Hispanic or Latino, Native Hawaiian, people who identify as non-white in a lot of different ways. And so no matter what language we use, sometimes it's still going to be a container of sorts. And so people might look at a word or an acronym in this case and feel like that doesn't necessarily include me. And so the goal here is not to exclude anyone. We didn't want to list every every single identity and identifying word that we possibly could, because this would be 2 pages long. So I just wanted to point that out. And so when you see BIPOC in our goals and in our language around equity, that is what we're speaking of. Next is engagement. So to utilize the viewpoints of those who reside in communities ODOT serves and who are likely to be affected by the decisions ODOT makes. Really, we're just kind of nailing down the ways that we get a lot of feedback from constituents, from citizens, from stakeholders. And so how do we utilize those in a way to make decisions that, because their decisions we make affect them? And then climate equity, so thinking about how we can invest in the protection of marginalized communities from environmental hazards, very specifically in the ways that we move within ODOT and the way that we offer projects and plans to others. Can you go to the next slide, please? As we move forward, we will really be looking at communicating this pretty clearly. And so the key messages, there's going to be a lot of things. There's going to be goals and metrics and inputs, but the key messages we want to be able to take away from the equity goals and priorities for the next couple of years is that we're actively seeking diverse community input, that we not only listen and consider all input, we ensure it influences our decisions to lead to better outcomes. We also want to make sure we believe that people know we believe all Argonians should benefit from our work. Not everyone has benefited from our work, and we're making a point to do a better job of including people we have not served well in the past. And then finally, our customers matter, and their voices improve our work. So we'll continue to actively seek their input. So you'll see those things as we continually talk about equity over the next few years as part of the strategic action plan. Next slide.
Hey, good morning, everyone. This is Cooper Brown, Assistant Director for Operations. I'm going to speak briefly a little bit more about the modern transportation system priority and the associated goals. So as mentioned by Chris and Nikatris already, one of the intents of this exercise was to make sure that we have goals that are broad enough to encompass the breadth of all the work that we're doing as a department, but also aren't a laundry list of everything. So that was something we kept in mind here. And as we talk about modern transportation system, I won't read the priority language as Chris already did, but you can see that we have 6 associated goals. And preservation and stewardship is the first one. If you think about our system as an organism, our transportation system, we have to preserve really the structure of it, the skeleton of it. We have a strong system. And so as we move to make it more modernized, as we move to improve it, one of the key elements is making sure that we keep the overall system that exists healthy and viable. So that's really the idea behind the preservation goal. Let's preserve what we do have. Let's make sure we're making smart investments to keep things running where they're running effectively. And let's do this all with an eye towards the environment, towards making sure that we're being sustainable with our decisions. It's really with an eye towards the longevity of the system. The second one is safety. The entire system and all of our organization really exists to serve people. And so it's vitally important for us to ensure that our system keeps the users of the system safe. It also keeps workers safe as they go about improving and maintaining it. The third one's accessibility, mobility, and climate change. Really here, the general idea is the system needs to serve all users. It needs to provide options for how we get around, and it needs to be mindful of the implications of those options in terms of how our transportation system impacts our climate. The decisions that we all make do have an impact. And so all those things need to be rolled up and considered somewhat holistically. So that's really the gist of the third goal there. The fourth goal speaks a little bit to something that was mentioned earlier today, but congestion relief, vitally important to our state. This goal is focused on the Portland metro region because it's felt most acutely there. For any of us that spend time in Portland, we know that, although it's been lessened somewhat in these COVID days. It's certainly a very real thing. We're experiencing it in other parts of the state as well, whether it be Salem, Kaiser, Eugene, Springfield, Medford, even elsewhere, and that's probably going to continue to grow. And of course, congestion has an impact not only on those pockets of our state, but really on the entire system, and primarily think about the movement of freight and the impact that that has to our economy, which affects all Oregonians. So that's really the idea behind that one, is that we have to make sure that we're keeping that front and center as we do our work. Project delivery is really what it says there. This is a bread and butter activity, much like maintenance and preservation of our system. We have to deliver projects and make improvements in efficient, smart ways, and we're frankly pretty good at that. This is something that we've long done, but it needs to continue to be front and center as we move forward. And finally, innovative technologies. We have to be forward-leaning and leveraging those things that are coming down the pike, those opportunities for doing things smarter. And that might mean that we have to make investments in these categories, which we might have to spend some money to make some money and reap those long-term benefits. But that's really what that's all about. And we have lots of opportunities there. It's really a matter of doing the due diligence and research to make sure that where we are investing in these spaces really is for benefit of the entire system. So those are the six the goals under the modern transportation priority. Let's jump to the next slide, if you will, please, Jessica. Similar to the key messages that Nikatris walked through for equity, these are the key messages that we want to speak to around the modern transportation system. I think I've covered most of these. The first one is really all about preservation. We have to preserve the system that we have as we continue to try to improve it. The second bullet is really all about ensuring we have an efficient, reliable transportation system that provides multimodal options and ensures the health and vitality of our users as well as our economy. And then the final is to the investment point that we do have to potentially make some investments on the technology front up front, and that can be challenging given the fiscal environment that we're in. But we have to think pretty clear-eyed about those possibilities and the benefits we might reap as we move forward to really ensure that we're nimble and adaptable as an agency, and that our system is nimble and adaptable to meet the ever-changing demands as we've seen this year. You never know what's coming down the pike, and so we have to be poised to meet all of those. So with that, I will turn it over to Travis. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Cooper. So sufficient and reliable funding is the third area of the priorities, and it's last for a reason, because really it's sort of foundational to achieving all of these other goals. It's really a means to an end of achieving those other goals, and critical to our success as an agency and for the success of the transportation system. So in this area, we're really talking both about the modern transportation system that we're trying to build, as well as the agency being fiscally sound. Chris already hit on, I think, the key concept that is laid out across these 5 goals that are under the sufficient, reliable funding priority. And that really is around diversification of our revenue portfolio. Just as you want to diversify any investments you have in order to make sure your money is safe, in the case of our revenue portfolio, we want to make sure that we have a very diverse set of revenue streams coming into the department for the various parts of the agency and the system. Today, we have a 3-legged stool that relies on the fuels tax, the weight mile tax, and our DMV taxes and fees. And that is a great and diverse revenue portfolio. However, that 3-legged stool is getting a little bit tippy given the reality of more fuel-efficient vehicles eroding the fuels tax, and in the long run, eroding the weight mile tax as well. So we really need to diversify that portfolio across all the modes. Right now, we are highly reliant on our multimodal funding on the federal government. We need to diversify and provide additional revenue sources to ensure that we actually have sufficient funding for those modes. So when we talk about this, the 5 goals that we've laid out are really about looking for revenue streams that will make sure that we can fund the transportation system that Cooper talked about in that modern transportation system goal, and ensure the fiscal health of the agency. When we talk about multimodal funding, we're looking at providing reliable funding to enhance multimodal options. This is an area where we have funding sources, but they've traditionally been fairly minimal And so we need to continue the work that we did in HB 2017 by bringing new revenue sources to the table to make sure we can fund public transportation and other types of more sustainable transportation, particularly as we know that we have changing communities and a need for addressing climate change. That will be critical to meeting a number of our other goals around safety and equity and climate. On the highway side, though, we know we're going to have to look at changing the way we charge for people to use the roads to have sustainable funding. And that will involve looking to road usage charging and tolling in the future. We're looking to implement statewide road usage charging to ensure that as the vehicles become more fuel efficient, that we still have a sustainable revenue stream going forward. And we're working right now with the Road User Fee Task Force that is interested in pursuing legislation that would create a large-scale road usage charging program into the future. And as we've already seen, we are establishing a tolling program in the Portland metro region that will help us fund some of those critical transportation projects and help us manage traffic congestion. So that would be absolutely critical for meeting our goals around congestion relief as well. And then as we'll talk about a little bit later today when I come back after the break and talk about the budget, we know that we as an agency have some long-term fiscal challenges. And so we need to make sure that whatever we're doing within the agency around sufficient reliable funding is helping our fiscal health. And that means by aligning our operational expenditures and revenue. That means we're going to have to be looking at both sides of that equation. How do we reduce our costs? How do we become more efficient? And also then, how do we find potential additional revenue sources that can address our operational shortfall? And with all that, we know that we need to develop and maintain strong partnerships with the system users who pay for the system and the agency's operations, as well as with our local government partners and private sector partners to really find ways to enhance investment in Oregon's transportation system. We've always found that we're stronger when we're united and can work together. And where we can, we're going to be looking for public-private partnerships that can help us leverage additional resources into the transportation system. Next slide, please. When we talk about our key messages for sufficient, reliable funding, I think it's clear that while ODOT is essentially the owner and operator of the transportation system, really, when we talk about ownership, the system belongs to everyone, but it's our responsibility as an agency to preserve and improve that. So we need to find diverse and secure funding sources to help make that happen. We also know that demands on the transportation system as our state grows, as our economy grows, as we change, require that we use creative strategies and strong partnerships to ensure sufficient funding. And then last, but really important, underlying all this is that we as an agency must be accountable, responsible stewards of public funds. We have to make sure that we are using our resources as effectively and efficiently as possible if we are to be trusted with more resources and help to address these issues that we have in the transportation system and in the agency's fiscal health. Next slide, please, and I'll turn it over to Ms. Baker.
Thanks, Travis. Good morning, everyone. Lindsay Baker, Assistant Director for External Relations. So you've heard from the other ADs about our 3 strategic priorities. You've heard about our goals that nest underneath each of our strategic priorities. And what does this mean and how does it translate and how does it roll up into how it's directing our work and guiding our work going forward. So what we did in an effort to create, I think, some alignment and some precision around what are the tangible outcomes and what are the tangible results that flow from this body of work, we landed on these strategic outcomes. So you can see here that these are the sort of targets and the focus points that will be sort of the outcomes from the 2021-23 strategic action plan. So these are not intended to sort of replace or supplant all of the other core work that is ongoing, but are really intended to be those things that are, one, connected across the priority areas and across the goals, and also really sort of targeting out to the concrete and tangible things going forward. So you can see here that there are some that sort of cross over the priority areas. So reducing congestion is a really good example. That includes pieces from the from the sufficient and reliable funding space. It includes pieces from the modern transportation space, and all of these strategic outcomes are intended to sort of nest in and provide that level of cross-pollination across the strategic priority areas. The other piece that's notable about the strategic outcomes is really the emphasis on the level of sort of focus and deliberate and intentionality that is required to really make progress on these. So we will have implementing actions for each of the strategic outcomes, as well as metrics associated with each of them that really are able to articulate and measure the progress as we're sort of implementing all of these and making progress on the strategic outcomes themselves. So next slide, please. So what are the next steps? So as we mentioned, this work has been sort of rolling out over the past 5-6 months or so. This will hopefully culminate in approval of the 2021-23 Strategic Action Plan by the Commission at their meeting later this month on, I believe, the 22nd. So the hope is that we will have a final formal document that includes the priorities, the goals, the outcome areas, and all the associated actions and metrics with them by the end of October timeframe. Through the end of the fall and into the winter, before we sort of launch formally at the beginning of the year, we will be working on preparing progress reports, sort of diving a little bit deeper into what are those implementing actions, how do we measure them, and maybe most importantly, how do we sort of translate them and communicate them out, both internally to staff and also to the public, so that the public is able to hold us accountable, we are able to hold ourselves accountable, and we are able to really make progress on this body of work. Obviously, a significant component of that, and I think I saw a question in the Slido about this as well, is sort of what does the communication look like? How are we sharing? How are we talking about this work? And how does it sort of become operationalized and internalized across the organization? Again, that is all work that will be forthcoming into the latter part of this year and really sort of kicking off at the beginning of 2021. So I might ask Jessica if you would go back, please, to slide 6. I think we sort of skipped over that one, and kick it to the director to see if he wants to cover a little bit of these sort of high level sort of primary key messages that really govern this entire body of work.
All right, thank you, Ms. Baker. So a couple of things that I want to close with, if possible. I guess first and foremost, many of you have probably heard me say this, and if you haven't, you're probably lucky. It means I haven't been monologuing in front of you. But I'll say this. I strongly believe that anything that we aren't intentional about, we won't do. And I think that's been true in my life. If I'm not intentional about something, it just won't happen. And so I think it's really important that we recognize intentionality in all of the things that we have in front of us. The other is, quite honestly, we're only here because of our customers. And our customers are legislators, our customers are each other, our customers are the traveling public. But let's face it, we've got 4.5 million people or more in the great state of Oregon, not to mention those that we serve that are outside the great state of Oregon that keep our economy moving. And all of them bring different needs, different perspectives, different recognition of what access looks like for them to a transportation system. And they are our customers. They are the reason we exist. And it's really important that we recognize that as we move forward. The other I'd say is none of what I'm arguing for here, or none of what I'm describing, and none of what you heard in the assistant directors is a testament to what we haven't done. Necessarily. This is an adaptation to a future conversation and the evolution of our transportation system. And we are evolving at a very rapid rate, and we as an agency need to adapt to get there. Now, does that mean that nothing's changing? No, quite the opposite. We are changing. And that change is really important, but that change is not at the whim of an individual. It's not at the whim of a few people that are driving all of these things. This is a product of a wholesome conversation with our commission, with people from the public, with the legislature, and many others really kind of advising, and many of us internally, to be honest with you, advising us on how do we best adapt as an agency and reflect the needs of those customers that I described before. So if we're going to take away a few key messages, again, intentionality is really important. Some primary key messages for the reason this work exists and the reason we're embarking on this journey with all of us together. Again, all 4,700 of us. The primary key message is we continually improve our system so that your trip is safer and more reliable, your environment is cleaner, your economy is stronger, and your community is more livable. There's a lot in that statement. We are building and maintaining a system and a transportation agency that evolves to meet those future needs. The future is evolving at a much more rapid rate than any of us could have predicted, and it's still happening, and it's happening even today. We believe that all Oregonians should benefit from our work, and we're being intentional about stating out loud that not everyone has. We're making a point to do a better job of including people that we have not served well in the past. Oregonians deserve an ODOT that is responsive to their needs and responsible with their money. Again, this does not mean that we haven't been responsible, but this is an acknowledgement that as we move forward, things are tighter, things are more difficult. We're dealing with pandemic, we're dealing with all kinds of things that really force a fiscal discipline. And so we are changing and adapting to be that agency that is responsible with their money. And some changes will happen quickly, others will take more time. We're being very intentional as it relates to specific outcomes and measurements of our progress. That is really important for our work efforts. Again, we have to show our work. And then finally, we deliver. And that's really important. We deliver for the customers of the state. We deliver for Oregonians. We deliver for our communities. And we have to keep the promises that we make to our customers and partners, because frankly, that is what brings us back into conversations to say, how do we build trust? How do we use that trust and recognize that that trust is earned, not granted? And as we think about what that means for our future in accomplishing each of these three priorities, whether it's equity, whether it's modernizing the system, or whether it's an eventual conversation that comes from reliable funding and where those funding sources come from, those are all based in trust, and trust comes from keeping our promises. So that's the key message takeaway for all of this work effort, why we're doing it, why the commission is driving us to really take this leadership moment. And I think now is time probably to transition to any questions. So Catherine?
Thank you. Assistant Director Travis Brower is going to be taking questions that you have about the strategic action plan using Slido again. Travis?
Great. Yes, I, for some reason, volunteered to actually moderate the questions for this segment. So we have about 9 minutes. We'll try to get through a few of these, as many of these as possible. And I will try to assign them out to an assistant director or director that, that can answer them best. I would note the first few are largely about funding. So what I think I'll do is I will take a couple of these and answer them and then turn it over to any of the ADs or the director who may want to add additional points to that. So the first two questions really are fairly similar. It says, given these priorities, what are we willing to not do? And then are there things that ODOT may stop doing in order to lean into the SAP priorities and live within our constrained resources? So it's pretty clear based on the tone of the questions is that people are very concerned and looking at our fiscal state of the agency, which is appropriate. And so we are at this point in the process finishing up work on this strategic action plan and really beginning that work now about reconciling the SAP with the budget situation that we have today. So we are going to be launching in the very near future an effort within each division that will ask each division to look at their work in light of our fiscal realities and in light of the strategic action plan to determine where we need to plus up some of our work, whether that's resources in terms of staff, whether that is additional funding. And in light of those realities and the strategic action plan, where may we need to stop doing some things? Where do we need to reduce our service levels? For things that may not be core functions, critical areas of the agency. So later today, I'm going to talk about that a little bit during our budget conversation right after the break. And then there's going to be a email that goes out to provide a little bit more context to everyone sometime later today or tomorrow. So I'll pause there and see if any of the ADs or the director want to add anything or say anything further on that part. All right, I have counted down from 5 in my head, so thanks for all of you for jumping in and saving me there. So next question, and I think actually the question around how is ODOT shifting its funding priorities to actually reflect these strategic priorities was basically covered just a moment ago in the sense that we're going to be looking across the entire budget. We're going to be have to make some reductions in the agency's operational funds, but we'll do that with the SAP firmly in mind, both as we look where we're going to plus up and where we may have to reduce some of our spending. So, question from Alex Bettinardi that is along these lines as well. When will our strategy link a lack of funding to actual disinvestment? We don't have enough money to fix all miles and bridges forever. Alex, thanks for that question. And that is something that we've been working through over the last many years. HB 2017 has certainly helped us with some of the funding that is needed to address these needs, but we know even at those levels of funding in HB 2017, we're still managing the decline of many of our assets. Bridges are on a 900-year replacement cycle. Culverts are on a 1,300-year replacement cycle. So in that sense, we have needs. We did make an effort in this area with the OTC. They approved an updated investment strategy that will help guide the work in the STIP. That is on their website. If you go to the July OTC materials, you can find it there. And it talks about within each of the various areas of the agency, how we can achieve our goals to the maximum extent possible within our limited funding. And we are explicitly focusing on a subset of the high volume, high priority corridors where we're going to invest most of our fix-it funds. So with that, I will stop and see if any of the ADs or Chris want to add anything on that element of how we deal with the need for discussions around disinvestment.
Well, I think I may just add just a moment, Travis, which is really a repeat of what you said. This does mean we have to have conversations about what are the elements that we give up that have really been foundational to the work that we do. It doesn't mean that we want everybody to just stand down and say, okay, how do we reset and start everything over and not do the things that we're doing, right? But it does mean that we need to have conversations to say our budget is only so big. And within that budget, that's a function of people and product. And as we start to develop what we're going to do going forward, we do have to shift and change, which means some of those changes are going to come and replace some of the things that we've been doing. Do I have a laundry list right now? No, I don't. But we are looking for, the leaders that are probably here as well as kind of elsewhere within the agency to help us define some of that as we go forward. Cooper, I think I cut you off.
No worries at all. Yeah, just a similar sentiment, but I guess my 2 cents that I would add to this conversation, and I appreciate looking at the questions, how much this is a theme, and I think it's the right theme. These are the right questions to be asking. This is the next stage of the work. To my mind, the importance of going through the strategic action plan work, setting these priorities and goals, is really that it gives us, it goes back to Chris's point earlier. If we're not intentional with what we are going to do and where we're striving, then we don't have that roadmap to help us make those decisions. So while it might seem to some like, why are we doing all of this planning and strategizing when really we just need to start making some hard decisions, we have to be really clear and intentional about where we are going over the next few years, where we are going over the next decade. And these are the things that we want to maintain focus on, whether it be the goal areas, which are some of those aren't reflected in the next 2 years of the strategic outcomes. They're more what I've been calling the bread and butter activities, the maintenance and operations and project delivery and those things. But we have to describe all of those, put them all out there in order to then have, in some ways, sideboards on those decisions that really we have to make here soon, which is what everyone's speaking of, and recognizing that that the longer we don't make those decisions, the more impact it has on our team. And so I think we're all committed to making those, but it is a necessary first step to really get clarity on our strategic plan. And so that's my 2 cents on why that's so important at this moment in light of these looming decisions.
Great. We've only got a couple minutes left, so I'm going to go to the second question on the screen there. ODOT serves many, many rural communities where rural community needs also be addressed as part of equity goals. So Nikatris, I turn to you as Assistant Director for Social Equity, and any thoughts you might have on this topic and others as well.
Absolutely. So yes, rural community needs will be addressed as part of equity goals. When we're thinking about social equity, it really is about the identities that we're talking about, social identities that we're talking about are present in all of our communities. And so we are thinking about that. We're thinking about what it means for people, especially in some of the rural communities, based on what I've been told from people who work at ODOT, right? So still also making sure we have good data, but what it means to make sure that people who are maybe aging in place, people who are struggling with income or working class communities, what it means to meet some of the needs in those goals. And it doesn't shift at all in terms of engagement. So if you live in a rural community and we're doing work in a rural community, we should be utilizing the viewpoint and perspective of the people that our decisions impact. And so it absolutely means that we will be leaning into what it means to work in every community that ODOT's in, to include rural communities.
Great. Why don't we take one more question before we go? I see a lot of words which are very similar to words that we've heard before. What are the actions? How is this different than what we have heard before? Cooper, do you want to answer that one?
Sure. Thanks, Travis. Yeah, it's a great question, and I think you're putting your finger on the difficulty with all these types of exercises, right? We have it's easy to come up with a strategic plan and say all the things that we all pretty much agree are important. It's all kind of mom and apple pie. These are things that are no-brainers. Yes, we should be focused on these things. As one of our commissioners said at the last commission meeting when we were discussing this, the devil's really in the details, though. And what are those concrete activities that you're going to do to actually move the needle in these spaces? What we didn't share with you, but just for a matter of time, because it hasn't been fully discussed with the commission yet, but we will in the next week or 2 weeks from now, are what are those concrete actions that we're going to take and how are we going to measure our success underneath those strategic outcomes that Lindsay walked you through. So for instance, on the carbon footprint one that she mentioned, the metric is really how are we as ODOT decreasing our carbon footprint through our projects and our activities and the materials we choose, and the projects we choose and the like. That's a concrete measure that we're going to be looking at to gauge our effectiveness in this space. And then we have subsequent actions by year that we want to take to meet that goal. And so those are going to be further delineated in the final plan, which we hope to be able to share once the commission approves it later this month. But that's exactly the right question. We have to have very concrete, very time-bound activities that we're taking and very clear metrics on how we're going to measure our success or failure in those spaces. And that's really the piece that we didn't go over in great detail today.
Great. Thank you, Cooper.
So thank you all for answering those questions. I think it's time to take a break now. We'll resume at 10:40 a.m. Thanks. Hello, I'd like to welcome everyone back. With me are Assistant Director Travis Brower and Stephen Hamlin, ODOT's Budget Director, and they're going to share updates on the manager activity and progress on closing the gap. Immediately following Travis and Stefan, we'll welcome back Nikatris Perkins to share information about equity partners and Chief Human Resource Officer Stephanie Coons to discuss our modern workforce environment. Afterwards, we'll take some questions on Slido. Remember, that's www.slido.com and #fall forum. Travis and Stefan.
Great. Thank you, Catherine. Appreciate the opportunity to be here to provide you an update on the agency's current budget challenges. Stefan and I are going to talk to you a little bit about what the challenges are, review some of what we've explained to the agency before, and then really try to talk a little bit about how we're going to close the gap, including some of the areas where we need your help. Next slide, please. So not to get too Dickensian on you, but I've started calling this a tale of two budgets because to go and quote Dickens in the intro to A Tale of Two Cities, it really is the best of times for us in our projects and programs side of the budget, while it's the worst of the times in agency operations side of the budget. The transportation projects and programs side is the dedicated federal and state funds that we have for specific projects and programs. It's our construction projects, our grant programs, and this side of the budget is doing really well, given all the additional resources that have come in from HB 2017. The challenge really is on the agency operations side. It's the state highway fund dollars that are available to run the agency for maintenance and operations activities like our snowplow drivers out on the road or our staff responding to wildfire issues. It's also our revenue collection and our administration. This is the area of the agency where we simply do not have enough revenue coming in long term to sustain our operations at their current level. Next slide, please. The reason for this really is that our costs are growing due to inflation, due to growing personal services costs for our salaries and healthcare and retirement benefits. It's growing at a rate of about 6% a year, while the revenue that we have available to operate the agency is really barely growing. It's about 2%. A lot of that is because of the way House Bill 2017, while providing a significant infusion of resources to the agency for projects and programs, really provided a very small amount of additional revenue for maintaining and operating the system and the agency. Just a very small sliver of that funding was made available for maintenance activities. And as a result, over time, our costs are beginning to outstrip our revenue, and then we will start running a deficit in the next several years, and then start going through our long-term cash reserves that we have. Next slide, please. Over the next several years through 2027, our total operational budget gap is about $720 million. So that is a pretty significant amount. And by 2025, the annual gap will reach about $200 million a year. So we know that we need to be looking to the future. Even though our budget today is still in positive territory, we're going to be making that shift into a deficit situation. And it would be far better for us as an agency to be looking proactively to the future and beginning to reduce our costs and find ways to live within our means than to reach a fiscal cliff in the years ahead and have to make deep reductions at that point. Next slide, please. So with that said, the agency leadership board has been working through these issues really for about the last year, since Director Strickler came on and gave us direction to begin working this intensively. So the budget principles that the ALB has lined out really will guide our work. They start with a fairly simple admonition: be smart. Let's find targeted solutions rather than across-the-board cuts. That's, I think, in reaction to the past where there were times where we actually made across-the-board cuts that hurt us unnecessarily. What we want to do now, though, is find those strategic, targeted cuts and ways of addressing this that are just not across the board and that really allow us to focus on our priorities and to find ways to reduce some of the areas that are not core to the agency. The second principle is really to do right by our people. By beginning now and managing this proactively over a longer period of time, we hope we can manage any reduction in our workforce, which is likely that we're going to have to reduce our workforce, through attrition or reassignment to new jobs to the greatest extent possible and avoid a reduction in force or layoffs. We also need to act as stewards of taxpayer resources. That means we need to spend those resources with maximum effectiveness and look for ways to innovate, do things differently and better so that we're getting the maximum bang for the buck, the resources that have been entrusted to us. We also need to make sure we're remembering the customer. It'd be very easy for us to look only at what is best for the agency, what's best for ODOT, but we need to remember that our customers are all the Oregonians who use the transportation system, the Oregonians we serve at the DMV counters, the trucking companies that we serve through the Commerce Compliance Division, and really all those users of the agency services and systems. And we need to keep their needs in front of our minds. We also, as we're working through this individually, need to respect our One ODOT vision. We've really emphasized the One ODOT focus, where we all need to be thinking about what's best for the agency, not just about our individual programs or divisions. So we're all tasked with thinking about that. We also need to be exploring constraints. We need to be looking at how we've always done things and explore using our revenue in different ways than we have in the past. Next slide, please. So with that in mind, we've developed a number of strategies for closing the gap. That includes really focusing our limited resources on the most critical programs, identifying where we have those core programs, and then looking at the other parts of what we do and figuring out, are there areas that we can stop work? Are there areas where we can reduce work? Can we reduce our service levels? Those are going to be really important conversations. They're going to be really, really difficult because we know that we as ODOT always want to do A-level work for our customers and the transportation system. But as we look to realign service levels, we may need to deliberately reduce those service levels in some areas that are maybe not quite essential to our work as an agency. We also know that we need to become more efficient. We need to be looking for ways to do things differently, look for ways to automate tasks, look for new technology, look for ways that we can save money. So that may mean that within the DMV, for example, we've been doing a lot of work. They've been doing a great job putting more services online so that we can serve customers online rather than having them come in line to our field offices. We also have opportunities, because of the way our budget is structured, to shift some of our costs that are currently paid out of our operational funds from the State Highway Fund to other sources like federal dollars. This is one of the areas where I think we're going to find the most significant immediate opportunities. We're already in the process of working with the Transportation Commission to build into the STIP some changes to how we use funds, both ways of covering more of our indirect costs of project delivery through our federal funds, as well as shifting some of our costs for some maintenance activities from one color of money to another to free up those dollars for our operational funds. We're also working very closely with our local agencies at reducing the amount of money that we fund exchange with them, or finding different ways to do that so that we're not using the scarce operational dollars that we have available to us. And then lastly, if we're successful with all those, we're going to hopefully have additional opportunities to explore resources that could help cover our costs. That would be things like the Commerce Compliance Division, seeking out revenue through the Motor Carrier Safety Assistance Program, a federal grant program, or DMV exploring opportunities to raise some of the DMV fees that aren't covering our costs. So with that, we can go to the next slide, and I will turn it over to Stefan, who will give you a little bit more detail and talk specifically about some of the activities we have underway or beginning to help us identify additional opportunities.
Thank you, Travis. Good morning, everyone. My name is Stefan Hamlin, and I'd like to walk through the next couple of slides with you. As Travis mentioned, we're going to be looking at a balanced approach to closing this budget gap over the next 3 bienniums. And as he already mentioned, we're looking at those cost savings that we can be doing, shifting of our funds from state highway funds to federal sources or other ways to do that. And then looking at additional resources. Maybe there are future revenue impacts that we can have the legislature help us with. Maybe there are fees that we need to adjust, and again, have to work those through the legislative process. And so what I would like to show you guys is on the next slide, please. is that the actions that the agency leadership board has already approved is that darker slice on this graphic, and that cuts about half of the $700 million, $720 million budget deficit that Travis mentioned earlier. So what we need to work on is those operating plan reductions, that lighter slice. And that's what we're going to be rolling out. Travis alluded to that. So what does that look like as we start going into these tough conversations? So the first thing that we did on the next slide, please, is that we have launched a ALB managers activity. And you guys are currently working through this. Some of you have already completed this, and we want to thank you for the time you took with your staff. And those of you that are still working through this, please continue to do that. We're looking to ask all employees in the agency to brainstorm ideas. We all have different vantage points from where we sit, and we all need to hear all of the voices that are out there. This speaks to equity that we want to encourage all of you guys to participate in this. Suggest those ideas forward. They may be small ideas, they may be big ideas, but all the ideas we need to hear about. So as you guys are working through this manager activity, we will be bringing those ideas forward, and each division is going to be looking at those, and we will also be looking at those at the agency leadership board. We did extend those. The assignment was going to be due at the end of this week, but we have rolled that out a couple more weeks because this is really important that we hear from you guys. This started at the beginning of September, and so we just want to make sure that we hear collectively all voices being included in this. The next thing on the next slide, the next activity that we will be doing is the operating plans. So each of the divisions is going to be coming back and looking at the next biennium, the 21-23 biennium. We've come up with a targeted $93 million in reductions that we have to take in the state highway fund on the agency operations side. And so we are going to ask each of the divisions to come back with an operating plan that will look at those reduced budget targets. And so one of the areas that divisions can start looking at is those suggestions that each of you as employees have been making to the manager activity that I just described. And we will also, as earlier, Chris and the assistant directors talked about the strategic action plan, make references back to that. We want to make sure that any reductions that we're taking, that we are stressing how they tie to the strategic action plan. We also are encouraging that the divisions don't do this independently of each other. There are many ideas that may affect other parts of ODOT that we need to have those cross-divisional discussions, conversations. And so we're encouraging that as you guys identify areas that may be more efficient, cost savings, but they may affect another division, that you reach out and talk with those leadership teams or with those groups that are affected. We will also then, we have in the works that our senior leadership team, the director and the assistant directors, will help look at all those reductions that have come forward and look to see what areas we actually need to either invest in or prioritize. And so it won't be an across the board reduction. We're looking to be strategic in how we implement this. And so I just wanted to let you guys know that we, many of you were here the last time we did this, and it was more of an across the board reduction. And this time we are trying to be mindful that that didn't work so well the last time. So we're we're trying an approach where we're looking at those areas that we actually need to invest in and try to figure out how best to do that. On the, I think, on the next slide, please. I'm going to turn it back over to Travis to give us any closing thoughts on this. And then at the end of all of this, I know there's questions coming in on Slido. We'll hopefully have some time to answer some of those. So Travis?
Yeah, I'll just briefly wrap up and note, as I mentioned earlier, later today or tomorrow, there should be a note about the budget going out across the agency. They'll provide a little bit more detail and a link to all of the options that the agency leadership board has put on the table. You've seen that before. We didn't have time to discuss all of those today, given our time limits. But I really want to emphasize that this is not going to be a one and done process. This is something we're going to need to build into our culture and our processes as an agency, looking at how to maintain being a high performing agency while looking constantly at how we can reduce our costs of doing business and find better ways to operate and be more efficient. This is something we're all going to have to own because, frankly, management and the senior executives don't have all the answers. You out on the ground know some of the areas where we can find cost savings, and you're going to need to help us bring those ideas forward and look for those opportunities. We are going to continue to explore agency-wide savings, whether that's in facilities due to teleworking, bond refinancing. We just saved $50 million on our bonds by a recent refunding we did. Looking at our fleet, all those things are going to be on the table. Everything's going to be on the table. And transparency and engagement of our employees are going to be really key. So we're going to commit, we're going to continue to provide information as we can, as we learn more and as we work through this together with you throughout the agency. So thank you very much.
Good morning. Good morning again, everyone. This is Natasha Perkins, Assistant Director for Social Equity. Just wanted to give you a little bit of information about Social Equity Partners. In a news brief, now 2 weeks ago, a list went out so you can see all the Social Equity Partners. There are 53 partners, 3 of them focused specifically on recruitment and interviewing. So Social Equity Partners basically are 53 people who are helping us deep dive, and by us I mean all of ODAT, deep dive into what it will look like to really measure progress and figure out how to create the lens and framework and toolkit for social equity throughout the agency. They're doing so by reflecting on their own job duties with the equity lens, identifying ways equity could be implemented in the day-to-day operations from their perspective and their job roles, and then recommending ways that ODAT can actively involve more people and measure progress. A question that's come up a lot is what's the difference between the social equity partners and the diversity action teams? The diversity action teams are really focused on a sense of belonging for ODAT. So those 10 teams throughout the agency are getting monthly guidance around activities that are designed to promote positive behavior and support a sense of belonging for everyone. They'll use those to increase awareness and appreciation of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and then they'll recommend or provide training or activities that promote that active participation around ODAT's prioritization of equity. And so they're doing things more holistically for everyone and creating space for dialogue and for listening, as well as sharing the information we give the DAT leadership with their entire region or DMV teams. If you have a social equity partner on your team right now, another question that's come up often is, what do social equity partners do now that they're social equity partners, or what do we need them to do? Their biggest task is really about reflection and utilizing the information and resources offered and available to think about their team, their office, their division, their crew, their department, their region. And so there aren't really things to hold them to in this exact moment. As we probably look more towards January, when they've been on for about a quarter, an update will go out really talking about the things we've already talked about as social equity partners and how we're going to move forward with them in terms of the things they'll really focus on for another 3 months as we move through a year of them really processing what it would look like for us to have social equity partners on the team. The reason we have social equity partners is really just to grow the team. We, again, I said this a little bit earlier, but we don't want social equity to be checking boxes. We don't want it to be, you know, I asked the 2 questions I was told to ask and really wanted to make it a part of who ODOT is across the agency, every corner of the agency, in every space. And so that's what Social Equity Partners is helping us do, because it doesn't make sense for me to design that and then go, here, do it this way, but instead to have a broader audience and a broader group of people who are thinking about that, because we all sit in very different places and do different things. And so that's why we have them as well. I am going to stop there and pass it along. I think we're answering questions towards the end of this segment.
Thank you, Nikatris. So my name is Stephanie Coons, and I'm the Human Resources Director. And I have to admit that 2020 has been quite the year for us, and it's not even over yet. We still have a couple of months, so I'm hoping that things turn around for the good. But we got to hear about all the stuff that we have going on within ODOT. There's the strategic plans, the action plans that we have, and then we have fires, and then we have this thing called COVID-19. And you talk about an event happening where there's no way you can plan for it, and then we have to quickly adapt to it. So what I wanted to do is just kind of give you a high-level overview of the modern work environment and sort of tell the story on why we're doing this. So how did we get here? So you can go ahead and put to me. I think we can all agree that COVID-19 wasn't anything that was planned. So in fact, it impacted the nation, and sadly, some people actually lost their lives during it. So as this happens to us, normally within ODOT, we can put a plan together, work it out, we have timeframes and we can do it, but we didn't have that as an option for COVID-19. So we had to quickly scramble to figure out how are we going to continue to do business, because we still had to do business as well. There's little planning in this, and I really like a couple of people earlier had mentioned we don't have all the answers to everything. And we're used to the answers for stuff to make things work. And this is a situation where we just don't have all the answers. So people are forced to do things differently, working outside their comfort zone. We immediately had to think differently in the stuff that we were doing, the body of work that we were doing. We had to think differently on how we're going to lead and supervise our employees and support one another. And I think I can confidently say we have supported each other in a way we've never done it before. And that's why we're successful as an agency. So during this pandemic, it's actually opened up a world of challenges, and I know we all could name lots of them, but also it's opened up the world of possibilities for ODOT. So what does this mean for us? So as I mentioned, as a department, we had to rethink how we serve our customers. That was one. You heard that DMV's doing customers by appointment only. We have to social distance. We can have so many people in vehicles. So we're changing what we do. We're changing how we work and where we work. Can we work from home? Can we work in an office? Do we go out to the field? And then there's lessons learned through all of this, because this is the first time we're doing it. So as we're walking through it, any hiccups or bumps that we come across, we're going to have to adjust and work those out. So knowing that, and knowing that this is now the new ODOT, this is what we're going to do, and this is what we're going to be moving forward, we set a goal of maintaining at least 1,500 employees in some form of remote work. So basically, we went from a small portion of the agency working remotely to close to 2,000 in a very short period of time. And so kudos to the people that made that happen, because if you were one of the people who were working remotely, it wasn't easy. And if you were one of the people who were setting up the people working remotely, it wasn't easy as well. So everyone had worked really hard to stabilize 44% of our workforce working remotely. And it's not an easy task. There's lots of stuff involved. What can we have? Can we use this technology? Lots of questions as we're still learning through this process. Right now, we've just barely scratched the surface, and there's still a lot of work to be done. But knowing that, we've already noticed some of the benefits of doing this. So as ODOT starts to move in this new direction, the benefits are going to vary per person, by team, and by program. So we're going to see lots of different connections to benefits as we move forward as an agency. And we already gained from some of the stuff we've learned that's made our processes better and also has helped people as they start to work within their roles. But some of the benefits includes allowing us to build some resilience, right? We have to be strong in order to pandemic, have a flexible workforce where we can adapt our schedules to make sure that we get the work done. And then we have to continue to do this on an ongoing basis because the world is changing rapidly. It's not waiting for ODOT or any other state agency or any person anywhere. So we have to make sure that we can shift and shift and pivot accordingly with it. Some of the other benefits are less driving, reducing traffic congestion and our carbon footprint. So there's some environmental benefits that's listed in here. Then I think Travis touched on this a little bit, a reduction in our facilities footprint, which is a future budget savings to the degree that we never anticipated. So we never thought we'd get to a point where we could look at maybe closing facilities or combining facilities in order to save costs as well. So as we're moving forward, we want to do things too to make sure that the employees are engaged in what we're doing. So in the summer of 2020, we submitted an employee engagement survey that was listed. And really, that's when the surveys go out, it's really important for people to respond to those because we do take this information and we incorporate it into our business to see how we can do it better. So in the survey that we had done, there were basically 1,900 employees received the survey and 1,590 employees responded to it. 56.5% never worked remotely and 97.7% showed interest in working remotely. So not only is it a new way of doing business, but people are actually wanting to do that if they can. So here's another example of employees providing feedback, and we've already incorporated some of the feedback we received in some of the changes that we've made today. There's also a graph that was a survey results listed. I just want to go over really quickly with you on some of the benefits that were listed there. And we all know what they are, and we've experienced them if we're telework or if we're working remotely from it. But even if we aren't, I think there are things that kind of make some good common sense. So it's less time spent driving. There's a better work-life balance. Ability to apply for jobs outside of my geographical area. So those are good benefits where you don't have to travel as much. Reducing traffic congestion and carbon footprint. Both potential ODOT budget savings. Better use of modern technology, increased productivity. People feel like they can work better there, be more focused, and then more efficient and less distractions as well that's listed there. So you can see that there is some personal benefits, but also there's some organizational benefits as well. Some additional personal benefits that came out during the survey was that employees felt like there's no need to commute, better quality of life, temperature control in workplace, and I like that because if a group of people are told you can't really turn up the heat, but if you're at home, you can go ahead and turn the heat up or down. So I think people like that. I kind of like that. Saves money, flexibility in scheduling, and then personal health. Then also some of the organizational benefits that were brought forward is to improve the attractiveness of working at ODOT. So whether you're in state government or the private sector, teleworking or remote working is the in thing now. So that's what people are doing. So for ODOT, for us, it gives us sort of a feather in our hat to attract people as well. So ability to help meet sustainability and climate goals, congestion reduction, and then higher productivity. Things were mentioned that we make less mistakes because we're able to focus a little bit better. But things we have to consider too when we're looking at the benefits is also with that, there's less gas tax revenue for ODOT. So not necessarily a benefit, but it is a factor. And then there is a potential for overwork or burnout for employees because when you are teleworking or working remotely, you think that you need to work all day, you don't take breaks and you don't do these things, but it's important that we focus on those as well. So you can find some more information on this survey on the ODOT HR internet page, and that's where you can find a lot of information as well. So as we're moving forward, there's so many questions out there. I mean, there are a lot of questions that we have on how are we going to do this. And I'm just going to be honest, we don't have all the answers, but we are looking at those and we're working for it. So as we talk about moving forward to do this, we do have a group of managers who are being proactive in gathering these questions and then working with others to try to get information out to employees. So we do understand that we are doing it, we're living it, and we need some direction. So with that being said, we do have protocols in place. We have a modern workforce environment steering committee who's aggressively working and combined with the Workforce Council to figure out how are we going to put policies and processes in place to give to our managers and our employees to be successful in this remote working world. We've decided, we kind of took a two-phase approach in working the modern work environment. The first phase was really taking a look at the immediate. So we have COVID-19, it's hit us. How do we get people out there working remotely if it is okay? The second phase we're going to look at is really continuing with that process, but also looking at the practical side of how work is done and then seeing how we can make improvements in that as well. So as moving forward, we're always going to be reaching out for ideas. We're always going to be looking at those questions. Just don't stop sending them, because it's going to help us make the best decisions as we move forward to make it better for the agency and for Oregonians as well. And for remote working, this is not just ODOT, it's all state agencies. And I was at a meeting the other day and someone said that ODOT is really a game changer and a leader in how we're going to work remotely across the state. So if you think that we're not doing a good job into putting the pieces together to make this successful, I just want you to think again. Everyone is having a difficult time with this, but we are looked as a front runner into being successful into rolling this out. So that's a really good kudos to us. But the remote work isn't just about ODOT. So it includes an enterprise that has to make decisions, and then also employees, us. We have to make the right decisions and bring in ideas and feedback to be successful. So working together wherever we work. The modern work environment isn't just about working remotely. It's truly about our entire agency, how we work together differently in the future. So we want to encourage remote working whenever it makes sense. But we also want to make sure that we keep this on the forefront, make sure that we're acknowledging that remote working doesn't work for everyone. So many employees don't even want to work at home. They'd rather come into work. So there's times and circumstances where you have to meet in person. There's a face-to-face. And what does that look like? And then some positions require face-to-face work. So not all job duties are suited for remote working. So moving forward, it really takes all of us. So we're just asking you to remain flexible in the mindset, understanding that as we work through the impacts of our environment, it isn't a one-size-fits-all. So even if we work on communications and policy updates, we may need to tweak them, but they may meet the needs for certain people or certain groups or certain programs. So it is a big ask to try to make a successful implementation of this throughout ODOT, which is a very large organization. Moving forward, some things to keep in mind is when you're recruiting, when you're taking a look at things, look at the capabilities in leading. So how you recruit for positions today is going to be different than how we have done it before in the past, especially with remote working. So look at bringing in people in with good leadership skills. Are they able to connect, working in the modern work environment, and always putting an equity lens on everything that we're doing. I think Nicotris is doing a really good job to explain where our agency is going and it across the agency, and particularly making sure that we are looking at equity when we bring in people into our agency. And then most of all, give space for grace. So we're all learning to navigate this. No one has all the secrets. I wish they did. I wish Director Strickler could just come out and say, this is what we're doing, and this is what it's going to look like. But we are going to work through this together as an agency, and we have to figure those things out. I think also, no one's sitting back twiddling their thumbs. I've seen everyone working very hard to take care of the fires, to take care of pandemics, to take care of our employees, to take care of our managers, to be a successful organization. And I have to truly say, I'm humbled to work for this organization. And I think people are doing a great job with everything that we have, what we've had thrown at us. We're still taking care of business for Oregonians. We're still caring for one another. And then especially during these times, we're even getting stronger. So with that being said, you can find more information on the HR internet page, and you'll see it's named ODOT Remote Work and Resources. And as we continue to move forward in doing business and trying to do business better, I want you to check out this webpage because it's going to have a lot of information that you're going to want to know, any FAQs or anything on policies and guidance. And my hope is that you found this information useful, and I hope that you too are excited about where the organization is going. Thank you.
Thank you all. We're now going to take some time to answer some of the questions we've had about the budget update, equity partners, and modern work environment. So I will be directing some questions to Natras, Travis, Stefan, and Stephanie. Let's start with this. I believe this is for Travis or Stefan. With more of ODOT able to work from home, do you see ODOT combining office space to save money? Travis, you're muted.
Of course I am, because I double muted myself. I knew I'd find some way to screw this up at some point today. So yes, absolutely. I think Stephanie mentioned this a little bit in her comments that as we've moved to telework, we see opportunities to modernize our workplaces as well. With a lot of folks who will be working outside the office, I do think absolutely, particularly in the Salem area, there will be some opportunities with our headquarters, various headquarters buildings, whether it's the TLC or the ODOT HQ building or even Mill Creek, to look at whether we can combine our footprint. And Bob Gephardt from Sports Services Division and Facilities with Randy Gagler, they're starting to have those conversations about what those opportunities may be. So I think this is an area where we may be able to save some money in the long run.
Thank you. Quite a few people have asked this question. And I believe, Travis, this might be one for you or Stefan also. Stefan, sorry. What actually are the most critical programs?
Yeah, well, certainly it's not me who gets to decide what those are. That will be a process that we are asking each of our divisions to go through, to look inside their portfolios. And as they're crafting that operation plan that takes into account the strategic action plan, they need to be looking at their entire body of work to figure out what the most important, most core parts of that work are, where they need to try to maximize preserving those functions. And then as you work down that list, eventually you'll get to areas that are of lower priority. And those are areas where we're going to have conversations both internally and with stakeholders to make those determinations, whether we can continue to support those services at current levels, whether we need to reduce service levels, whether we need to end some of those entirely. So that will not be a decision that is made at necessarily the director or assistant director level, although we certainly will weigh in, but really something each division is going to have to look within their programs, because you're going to know those best. And then we're going to have conversations across the agency so that everybody can weigh in and look at how those program decisions will affect others, because we don't live in silos, even though we sometimes act like it. Each of our actions in our programs can affect other parts of the system, other parts of the agency, and our customers as well.
Thank you, Travis. This next one is for Stephanie. How are you addressing the downside of remote work? Water cooler networking, social needs for team building, FaceTime with customers, social isolation, etc.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. And I think a lot of that is going to be based around some of the training and the policies that we're going to put together to help managers and employees be successful in it. So those are things, those are discussions we're having now about that as well.
Great, thank you, Stephanie. This next one is for Stefan. You referred to actions already taken to reduce the budget gap by ALB. Can you provide some examples?
Yes. So some of the things that we've looked at, in a lot of these have to do with how we implement some of the programs within the STIP and the funding that we're looking at. So in House Bill 2017, for instance, we see that much of the money was set for pavements and bridges. So we're looking at some of those state-funded program areas to see if they qualify for House Bill 2017 funding. So freeing up some of those older state-funded programs to move forward. The downside of that is that that is a hit to the STIP. I think there was another question that said that with all the limitations on all of our programs and funding, these are trade-off conversations. If we shift monies from one funding source to another, then it does cause a trade-off in that area. Some of the other things we're working on are with our local partners. We're looking at the fund exchange program and some of those areas to see if we can change the rate or work with our local partners better. And then we also have other other opportunities that we're looking at with DMV fees, where we know based on our cost responsibility studies that there are some fees that do not pay for all of the costs and or do not recover the revenue for the costs involved in those programs. And so we're looking to see if we can potentially raise those fees. And again, those will require legislative action. So some of the things that ALB has approved is to move some of those items forward and to help bridge the gap. And Travis, I don't know if you want to add any other specifics to that.
I won't add any other specifics, only that I actually have with me my copy of the ALB Budget Task Force gap closure options that we shared with the OTC. We didn't want to walk through them all today because there's over a dozen of them, and that would have taken more than the time allotted. But you can go on the ODOT budget intranet page, and it has a link to this. And I believe it also will be linked in the message that goes out on the budget later today. So you can scan over that and look at those areas. Not all of these are necessarily things we're going to be able to implement. Some of them require legislative action. Some of them, as we do a little bit more refining, we're finding that they may not work as well as we thought. And some of them have been changed by COVID, frankly. But we're going to be leaning into trying to find these ways and more to reduce our budget gap and find ways to reduce our costs.
Thank you. I think I'll let you guys fight over this next one. I think we have proven that many of us can do almost all meetings and work virtually. This should mean that we can reduce buildings and sell vehicles, right? Maybe that's one for you, Stefan. Good one, John.
I think that we are looking at consolidating facilities, and we potentially would be looking at our fleet also and seeing if there's opportunities there as more and more people work remotely. It may be, and as we continue to do meetings like this remotely and we don't have to drive in and we get to save on drive time, it may be that our fleet size shrinks. And so I think we have our fleet looking at those opportunities to take reductions there also. So that is something that I believe we are working on.
And I'm going to keep picking on you guys. A lot of these questions, understandably, are budget related. Is there any more combining of divisions or branches that could be done that could possibly save some cost of paying salary benefits of high-level management positions? Travis, I think
yeah, I'll be happy to take that one. Yeah, that is absolutely going to be on the table as each division works through how to best spend its resources. We know that we're going to need to be looking at combining various groups for savings, whether that's for the high-level management or even the staff-level positions. So, for example, one of the things that I did as I took over as assistant director was to combine a variety of the functions in the agency related to finances into the finance and budget division for the first time, bringing those groups back together. Many of them had been together. One of the things we did was took a unit that had been in financial services and combined it with our economist unit, and actually were able to reduce one manager position, one PEMF level position. And we're able to get some efficiencies, we believe, in the staffing of that group as well. So we're going to need to continue looking at those opportunities, whether that's reducing senior management or even combining different locations where we have various functions spread across the agency to reduce the number of staff that we have in some of those and more effectively do our work.
Wonderful. I had a question. Mark Sauer is also on the phone, and I hope I pronounced your last name correctly. Everyone mentions the importance of technology, regarding efficiencies, remote working. What is the perspective of the CEO?
Well, let me just first say I think everything is related to business outcomes, right? So the technology basically is an enabler to the agency so that the agency can do its job. It's not about the technology, it's about the output and the business outcome. With that said, we definitely are looking at some other technology to support remote working. The one that comes to mind most specifically is enabling electronic signature, recognizing that a lot of this work is being done from within our homes, and instead of printing state business out on personal printers and then throwing it away or disposing of it in ways that might not necessarily meet the sensitivity of the documents, is to have electronic signature and a fully digital platform for us to do our work on.
And I'm going to throw you one more since you're nice enough to join, and I'll keep Travis out of the hot seat for one more time. How do we modernize our ancient IS systems and get us into this millennium to increase efficiencies and reduce costs during budget reductions?
So I think it's a great question, and it really is a big challenge. We have a number of things that we need to do to modernize our applications. We are currently building a management system to be able to better do that. And of course, I think the biggest part of this is working with the business in order to, from an IS perspective, is to outline those systems that have technology that is either outdated or will soon be outdated, so that we can work with a business in a process to identify a replacement solution, preferably commercial off the shelf. But if that does not meet the business needs, most effectively then to develop a custom application if necessary in order to be able to do that. There is a ton of work. We did an assessment. We have 471 enterprise applications that we're maintaining and supporting. Many of those are on outdated platforms. And so our first step is to identify and work with the business on what those priorities are, and then to tackle those within each of our dedicated service groups.
Thank you, Mark. I think this next one is probably for Stephanie. High employment engagement equates to budget savings. What is OTC and ODOT leaders? What are they doing to address the very fast downward trend of disengagement?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that a couple of options, and of course, I'm not going to have the complete answer for you, but just thinking this through, we do a couple of things of looking at survey results and getting feedback from employees and working with managers to find out what are some of the key areas that we need to focus on to figure out what is that looking like, and then developing some training and using some of our resources, whether it's the EAP or grabbing other resources to help provide tools for our managers and our employees. So that's what goes through my mind as we're thinking through this right now.
All right, and I want to make sure that there's time for Travis to answer one more question. So any possibility of realigning House Bill 2017 funds towards maintaining our infrastructure as well as the operations side?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a discussion that we have had with the legislature in the past. To be honest, when HB 2017 was under development, we put forward an allocation of funding that had a heavier lean toward allowing us to use it for maintenance and operations. The legislature reduced that down. It's about 6% of the funds that are available to the agency can be used. I think we had 20% in our recommendation. We went back to them in 2018 when they were doing a modification to HB 2017, and they said, yeah, no thanks, not going to make that change. But perhaps now that we've had these conversations and they're aware of our operational shortfall in a way they perhaps weren't before, we can continue that and perhaps make that change. I do think that they're going to want to see us as an agency find ways to become more efficient, reduce our footprint and costs in order to be able to approve some of these changes that we're looking at, though, in the legislative arena. But yes, absolutely on the table. It's something we can have a discussion about.
Thank you, Travis. And thank you, Stephanie, Stefan, and Nikotris as well. Let's move on to the Transportation Excellence Awards. The ODOT Excellence Awards have been a part of the Fall Forum since 2014. In 2017, the Bill Tebow Award for Excellence, Diversity, and Inclusion was added. Last year, the Everyday Safety Award was added. And during this most unprecedented year, we announced the Service Excellence Award. I welcome Director Chris Strickler and Karis Alston, Organizational Change Management Manager, to announce this year's recipients.
Thanks again, Catherine. So we're now at that point in the agenda where we have the opportunity to recognize the individual employees throughout the agency for your contributions and accomplishments that have gotten us to this point. Certainly, it's been a very trying year and challenging year, and you have really stepped up to the plate. And pardon the sports reference there, but recognizing that you have really stepped into bringing ODOT along as we continue to kind of be faced with these different challenges. The pandemic clearly has impacted every one of us. And despite these challenges, or even possibly because of them, we have seen our employees continually and consistently demonstrate excellence for ODOT. This year, we're going to recognize individuals in 6 categories for your exceptional achievements in demonstrating ODOT's mission and values of integrity, safety, equity, excellence, and unity. Agency leaders from across ODOT have helped to select the winners, and each individual person that will be recognized today is one of a significant list of nominees that came forward. This year, we chose 40 winners from 105 nominees, and all nominees will be listed in the program posted on the Fall Forum SharePoint site. A message for everybody who was nominated. What a wonderful privilege and honor to be nominated by your peers, and thank you to each of you for your commitment to ODOT. Although not everybody can win, we truly appreciate all that you do, and it's quite an honor to be recognized by your colleagues as even achieving the nomination. We're all inspired that so many of you have taken the time to nominate, and we hope that you enjoy this moment, albeit quite different from others that we've had in the past. And I want to continue to encourage you and continue to foster the incredible work that you're doing and being done across the agency by others. So with that, let's transition to the first category, which is our Outstanding Leader Award. With this first category, we plan to honor individuals at ODOT who are recognized as leaders and demonstrate ODOT's values through their leadership skills. These winners encourage and motivate their staff or teams across other aspects of the agency as well. Karis? Oh, I think you're muted.
Just give us one moment. We're going to make this work. can you? Okay, I'm so sorry. We actually did practice this, I swear. Okay. I need my script. Oh my gosh, I had to switch computers, so now everything is messed up. I'm so sorry. I was so excited about this too. Okay. So I wanted to start by saying something super awesome and like a little joke, but now I'm totally thrown off. It was something about the Great British Baking Show. That's what it was. So I don't know if any of you have had the opportunity to see that show, but at the end, they always announce a star baker. And I feel like I get to now announce like 40 star bakers. So I'm super excited. So here we go. You have to switch for me. Okay. So our first Outstanding Leader Award goes to Sarah Chatterton. The nominator writes that when Sarah gets involved with a project or team, you know the outcome is going to be a success. Sarah is effective with her leadership in all settings. She's been very effective independently establishing and leading the Transparency, Accountability, and Performance Program as part of House Bill 2017. She motivates and encourages others through her leadership skills and ability to deliver. She has a successful track record of delivering complex projects through diverse teams and stakeholders. Congratulations to Sarah Chatterton. Leanne Ferguson, Safe Routes to School Program Manager. The nominator writes that Leanne is a determined, energetic, and positive force of nature. A true public servant, she is dedicated to making Oregon a place where our children, marginalized communities, and all Oregonians feel safe and supported on our streets. Leanne's compassionate strength, enthusiasm, and passion for the work she does is infectious. She energizes and empowers those around her to do their best, while also seeking out diversity of thought and perspective. Congratulations, Leanne Ferguson. Gabriela Garcia, Region 1 STIP Coordinator. The nominator writes that Gabriela's professionalism is unmatched. She is calm, clear, and gets her point across in even the most trying circumstances. Gabby's approach to her work has inspired and motivated most people who work with her. Her coworkers enjoy working with her because she genuinely seeks to resolve issues based on what will benefit the overall greater good. She is a natural leader. Working with Gabby motivates others to follow through with process improvements to make everyone's job easier. Congratulations, Gabriela Garcia. John Hustis, Region 2 Area 3 Manager. The nominator writes that John invests in people. He genuinely cares about his people's success. He has done an amazing job of bringing the crew together and creating a culture of one ODOT. He builds people up and is always preparing them for the next challenge. He stays calm under pressure and supports this team to achieve their career goals and be the best they can be. John is a man of great integrity and commands respect when he addresses those he leads. Congratulations, John Hustis. Sarah Lean, East Region Manager. The nominator writes that Sarah truly cares about the staff who work hard to keep this agency moving, and it shows. She has done an excellent job of balancing the needs of her employees with the needs of the agency, issues that are not always in alignment. The leadership competencies she exhibits are shining examples of what we can aspire to achieve. She has created an environment that is respectful, professional, creative, trustworthy, and fun. She is committed to her people, to Oregonians, and to her team. Congratulations to Sarah Lean. Heidi Schoblum, State Roadway Engineer. The nominator writes that Heidi is a professional, kind, and bold leader who is not afraid to tackle the hard problems. She sets a positive tone and maintains a respectful working environment. Heidi has the ability to take a complicated situation and explain it in a way that most can understand. She has amazing intuition as a leader. She creates an environment where fresh thinking is welcomed by a team that cooperates on a very friendly, professional level. One of her teammates said they weren't sure what a real leader looked like until now. Congratulations, Heidi Schoblum. Carla Tackett, Columbia River Region Enforcement Manager. The nominator writes that Carla has spearheaded the creation of a tight-knit, supportive crew. She leads by example day in and day out. Her loyalty and dedication to the job make her an incredible leader and one we are lucky to have. Carla lives the ODOT values each day in all that she does. She firmly believes that everyone has something to offer. She raises the bar for everyone around her and wants nothing but the best for everyone in her circle of influence. Congratulations, Carla Tackett. Mark Thompson, Region 3 Tech Center Manager. The nominator writes that Mark seems to check every box when it comes to desired attributes of a leader. He always puts service before self and takes the time to build relationships and understand others. Mark always seems to do the right things for the right reasons, and I believe a big part of this is due to his willingness to openly listen to others and consider all input prior to making a decision. Mark is a leader who inspires others to become their best. Congratulations, Mark Thompson.
Okay, thank you, Karis. So I have to say that last picture scared me to death. And so, Mark, I'm hoping that wasn't you in the driver's seat. Okay, Professional Achievement Award. With the second category, we will honor those who have made significant professional contributions to our agency and their career. These winners are recognized by internal and external entities for their contributions and challenge themselves and others to think of new and innovative solutions to problems. And now that Karis has had a chance to collect herself, off to you, Karis.
Thank you. So our first Professional Achievement Award winner is Sophie Brown, State Retaining Wall Engineer. The nominator writes that Sophie is an asset to the agency with performance that is a great credit to us all. She is in a very demanding position, yet she devotes herself to the well-being of others in the agency. Under Sophie's direction, the Retaining Walls program has become more successful than ever envisioned. She's always striving for self-improvement and, by correlation, ODOT practice improvement. Her generosity of spirit, humble humor, high dependability, and straightforward problem-solving approach are a boon not only to ODOT, but to our academic partners and larger scientific and engineering community. Congratulations, Sophie Brown. Jeff Hayes, Region 1 Project Delivery Traffic Engineer. The nominator writes that Jeff is a great asset to ODOT. He is a great leader in the unit and provides tremendous support to staff, especially during this pandemic. Jeff has informally mentored and trained people. It is something that he takes seriously. While he is direct in the business, he also understands the subtlety of working with colleagues, and he is very willing to support them when they need help. In spite of his multitude of responsibilities in traffic design, he knows how to stay on top of the issues. Congratulations, Jeff Hayes. Thomas Loynes, ODOT National Marine Fisheries Service Liaison. The nominator writes that Tom rolls up his sleeves and dives in to help solve problems. His customer focus is legendary, and he's known for his willingness to drive anywhere in the state on short notice to help resolve issues, support his customers, and quickly identify workable solutions. Throughout Tom's career, he has been an innovator, mentor, and leader. Tom has always served the agency with an open mind and a balanced approach. Tom inspires trust with those that work with him, which has preserved and expanded the confidence that the National Marine Fisheries Service has in ODOT and the Federal Highway Administration. Congratulations, Thomas Loynes. Loren Mulligan, DMV STP Communications Lead. The nominator writes that Loren is inclusive and collaborative, considers and supports the needs of others, is a self-learner who seeks constructive feedback, a meaningful coach and mentor to those she leads, and takes the time to build and maintain working relationships. Not only does excellence shine through Loren's many contributions, it is her approach to her work that equally excels. As a continuous leader, she readily accepted the challenge of leading and producing DMV's first online open house with the public. Congratulations, Loren Mulligan. Darren Neval, District 7 Manager. The nominator writes that Darren provides excellent leadership for his maintenance staff and holds them to a high standard. He goes above and beyond working with external partners and helping communities get the support they need along our highway system. He has great relationships with both internal and external partners. In turn, this benefits the agency and our workforce. Darren does a great job of looking for opportunities that are outside our normal practices, but staying in line with ODOT's core. Congratulations, Darren Neval. Beth Sandver, Environmental and Hydraulic Engineering Program Coordinator. The nominator writes that Beth's contribution to the agency is larger than the sum of her many accomplishments. She is a one-of-a-kind leader with a powerful heart and unstoppable tenacity. Along with Beth's many program and project talents, she finds time to personally connect with many people throughout the agency, mentor and help people be their best selves, provide a positive example, and be an empathic ear for many of us. Beth is a highly respected and professional leader, has exceptional problem-solving skills, and clearly sees indirect effects and consequences of a decision. Congratulations, Beth Sandver. Jill Smith, Strategic Communications Manager. The nominator writes that Jill is an incredible leader and a force of unification in every team she joins. She handles even the toughest situations with a calm, clear head and solid communication. Jill truly walks her talk. She carries herself with strong moral and ethical character and is willing to make the right choice even when it is difficult. Her commitment to communications and focused vision have resulted in the creation of a dedicated communications team with the Delivery and Operations Division. Congratulations, Jill Smith. Denise Whitney Dalka, Strategic Data Program Manager. The nominator writes that without Denise's leadership and expertise, we would not be where we are today. She has created an understanding and appreciation throughout the agency of the critical nature of data in all of our work and also with external stakeholders. Her passion, intellect, personality, leadership, and enthusiasm have allowed her to develop relations across the entire agency. Denise has a special and valuable blend of talents that support her achieving so much across the agency and beyond. Intellect, caring, compassion, understanding, relationship building, listening, curiosity, continuous learning, and improvement. Congratulations, Denise Whitney Dalka.
Congratulations to all 8 recipients. Thank you so much for your efforts for the agency and for the citizens of Oregon. We now turn to the Lifetime Career Achievement Award. With this next category, we'll honor ODOT employees who have at least 20 years of distinguished service in their profession. And this award reflects a lifetime commitment to public service and a continual effort to reach even higher. Karis?
Thank you. Our first winner in this category is Doug Bish, State Traffic Services Engineer. The nominator writes that Doug's career is marked by unifying ODOT's traffic engineering discipline across the state and leading the nation in how Oregon improves safety on all its public roads. Doug's passion for safety, driven by personal and professional experience, is infectious, and those of us who are lucky enough to work directly with him benefit from his exceptional perception of how to influence or change the way people interact and his perspective on practical methods to achieve change. He is dedicated to the vision and necessary actions of reducing fatal and serious injury crashes and uses his unique perspective to engage others in this effort. Congratulations, Doug Bish. Jerry Bohard, Policy, Data, and Analysis Division Administrator. Jerry's leadership has been truly visionary. She has helped transition ODOT from a highway agency to a multimodal agency. She deeply cares about the success of the agency and its people. Jerry has been an ally and mentor to many staff, and she knows how to provide just the right amount of oversight to keep people on track while engaging their energy and passion. Jerry has always been the embodiment of One ODOT, truly caring about ODOT's people and putting the agency first. She is an inspiration in all that she does. Congratulations, Jerry Bohard.
Jerry, I just have to say congratulations and thank you very much for all of the advice and guidance. You were missed. Thank you.
Our next winner is Ben Derby, Motor Carrier Enforcement Officer 2. The nominator writes that Ben is always available to help in every way: additional training, helping with difficult customers, getting necessary supplies, and helping with personal problems. He was instrumental in developing chain enforcement operations and procedures. Ben demonstrates integrity and professionalism in how he communicates with both customers and fellow employees. All of his coworkers feel strongly that Ben's leadership abilities have enhanced and improved the morale and operations of Blue Mountain Region crews. Congratulations, Ben Derby. Rhonda Kanashigi, The nominator writes that Rhonda supports diversity and equity at all times. She is fair and treats all around her with dignity and respect. Secondly, she supports equity in her recruitment practices. She recognizes that bringing in diverse candidates means enhancing the skills and talents of her teams. She supports the idea of one ODOT. She can be counted on to be thorough, precise, and accurate. She leads by example and ensures that all of her staff are provided with the tools necessary to accomplish deadlines and goals. Congratulations, Rhonda Kaneshegi. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. Albert Lamb, Senior Fuels Tax Auditor. The nominator writes that Albert has always provided excellent service to our licensees and provided historical information of statute and rules to both his peers, management, and others, both inside and outside the agency. Albert is quick to see the big picture and focus his energy on what's most important. Albert is passionate about providing accurate audit results that fairly and consistently represent ODOT. He is an amazing person, a significant resource to ODOT, and worth recognition. Congratulations, Albert Lamb. Con Lamb, Senior Roadway Engineer. The nominator writes of this next winner, Con improves the efficiency of the organization by continually applying more than 25 years of institutional knowledge of our highway system. He has been a great career coach for many young professionals and helps them to navigate successful career paths with the agency. Throughout his career at ODOT, he has always shown exemplary leadership and the ability to inspire and motivate others through their willingness to take on new projects and lead by example. Congratulations, Con Lamb. Tom McClellan, DMV Administrator. The nominator writes that during Tom's tenure as DMV Administrator, he has had the courage and tenacity to lead a transformation of the DMV. Tom's conduct as a public official has consistently held up strong standards of accountability and ethics. He put safety of the public and DMV employees front and center in reopening during COVID-19, ensuring that opening field offices would not endanger our customers or employees. Tom has made deliberate efforts to bring his division closer to the rest of the agency and work together to achieve important agency goals. Congratulations, Tom McClellan.
I just wanted to congratulate you myself as well. Thank you very much for your dedication to the agency, to DMV, and thank you for standing up what might be, along with your team, what might be the largest IT infrastructure project in the state. Nice work, and thank you. Congratulations.
Our last winner in this category is Wayne Norman, Senior Project Coordinator. The nominator writes that Wayne has been instrumental in sharing his knowledge with others to help them develop and implement design and construction to build quality projects. Wayne treats people respectfully regardless of their background and is consistently professional. He's a great collaborator who has always provided his best effort to get the job done and lead by example. Wayne takes pride in his work and in his job at ODOT. It's important for him to share his knowledge and experience with designers and construction staff to ensure we construct infrastructure that is long-lasting and of high quality. Congratulations, Wayne Norman.
We turn now to the Everyday Safety Award. With this category, we'll honor employees who demonstrate leadership in promoting ODOT's value of safety. Clearly, safety is one of our highest priorities. These winners embrace and promote a culture where safety drives decision-making and actions for everybody, not just employees, but others outside of the agency as well. Karis?
Thanks. Our first winner in this category is Cam McGinnis, Region Safety Manager. The nominator writes that Cam is a safety rock star. Many employees will have avoided serious injury in their careers due to his honest concern for their safety and the program he is building to support them. Cam has, in a few years, changed the safety culture in our region. Instead of imposing and enforcing rules, he brings employees in to be part of identifying risk and developing safer methods. Cam's approach to developing a culture of safety is personal. He has worked in high-risk environments and cares for his fellow workers. Congratulations, Cam McGinnis. Mary Ann Ralston, CCD Support Specialist. The nominator writes of our next winner, Mary Ann exemplifies the true spirit of ODOT, lead from any chair. She embraces her work each day, lifts the spirits of those she encounters, and never wavers from that which she is charged to do. She is a great representative of One ODOT and the type of employee that we want. She makes sure to set an example for other employees. It is clear that she's really passionate and cares about her coworkers. Congratulations, Mary Ann Ralston.
New to the ODOT Excellence Awards this year is the Service Excellence Award, which recognizes individuals who continuously strive to be more efficient, effective, and innovative in providing the highest level of service for both internal and external customers. Winners of this award consistently demonstrate a willingness and personal commitment to go above and beyond what is normally expected in their service to others. Correct?
Thanks. Our first winner in this category is Thomas Amato, Enterprise Operations Manager for ISB. The nominator writes that Thomas brings a calm, solutions-minded, and service-oriented attitude and expertise that allow colleagues to gain insight and engage well in problem-solving or strategy development. Thomas has exhibited a service ethic and professionalism that has helped advance the practice of the Information Systems branch. As ODOT rose to the pandemic response challenge, Thomas led and inspired his IS leadership team to meet the service requirements by his willingness to roll up his sleeves and work alongside the team. Congratulations, Thomas Amato. Jennifer Boardman, Regional Transit Coordinator. The nominator appreciates Jennifer's initiative and commitment to the success of public transportation in Coos and Douglas County. Jennifer brings a calm, steady hand in her work with both her ODOT colleagues and our local agency partners. She is a team member that others look to for her leadership and her collaborative approach. Jennifer worked through sensitive and often political stakeholder situations and maintained a respectful and professional tone throughout. She is well respected by internal and external staff. Congratulations, Jennifer Boardman. Teresa Brassfield, Regional Environmental Coordinator. The nominator writes that Teresa carries an extremely heavy workload without complaint, yet always finds the time to willingly help others. Teresa is always willing to help out and goes above and beyond what is expected to find the most innovative and absolute best solution to an issue. Teresa is extremely well organized, very efficient, and effective in her work. Due to her work ethic, knowledge, and approachability, she is and has been a mentor to many peers and managers. Congratulations, Teresa Brassfield. Our next winner is Shelley Crick, Graphic Designer. The nominator writes that Shelley's reputation for service excellence is felt across the agency and all the way up to the governor's office. She is the first to volunteer for new initiatives and take on new projects. She knows how to get to the heart of the project by asking the right questions and using her wicked sense of humor. She listens and gives her customers choices that align with their vision. Those who work with her are consistently impressed with her ability to take an abstract concept and turn it into a beautiful product that helps tell ODOT's story. Congratulations, Shelley Crick. Mary Curtis, Office Coordinator. The nominator writes that Mary is the glue that holds our office together and keeps it running. She fosters wonderful, positive relationships with everyone she interacts with. She recognizes the importance of positive relationships and how they are crucial towards producing timely, accurate results. She inspires others to higher levels of service excellence by her actions. The support she provides and the selfless way she goes about doing her job provides a leadership quality that transcends what is expected. Congratulations, Mary Curtis. John Eden, Permit Specialist. The nominator writes that John sets the tone in the office through his kind and trustworthy personality. The construction office and district maintenance office rely on him for so many things beyond his daily duties. He has never excluded anyone from conversation and always ensures that the office building is safe for the occupants. John is someone you can look up to and is someone that inspires you to work hard. He has a great attitude and shows compassion to everyone throughout the office. Congratulations, John Eden. Wade Holliday, Senior Culvert Maintenance Hydraulic Engineer. The nominator writes that Wade is always willing to roll up his sleeves and help guide, train, and mentor others. He does his work with an eye to helping others be successful. His positive attitude, demeanor, and initiative to work through issues motivates others to achieve a higher level of service. He goes out of his way to check in on project status and timelines and ensures projects are implemented as designed. His superior technical skills, collaborative skills, engineering judgment, and desire to strive for the greater good are demonstrated every day. Congratulations, Wade Holliday. Nick Hopper, DMV Third-Party Program Lead. The nominator writes that Nick's commitment to service excellence is evidenced by the uncompromising integrity of the program that he has established. He has been a great leader for our team. His dedication, professionalism, and commitment to excellence are evident in every aspect of his work. He's very dedicated to his work even on the hardest days and never stops trying to do his absolute best. He's a skilled communicator and thinker, an outstanding mentor, a passionate safety advocate, and a tireless worker. Congratulations, Nick Hopper. Heidi Manlove, Safe Routes to School Bicyclist Pedestrian Program. The nominator writes that Heidi is so passionate about her work and the Safe Routes to School program. She works so hard with stakeholders to make sure they have the tools they need to be successful. Heidi is willing to rethink programs to address the on-the-ground challenges, even when it means more work and creativity for her. She works closely with lots of other staff members and helps them realize the importance of this work. She encourages them to go the extra mile to meet the needs of our community members. Congratulations, Heidi Manlove. Chris Pucci, Project Surveyor. The nominator writes that Chris goes above and beyond in bringing about individual innovations, helping build a culture that is receptive to innovations, and supporting others in bringing their ideas forward. He develops trust between himself, boots on the ground users, management, and other DOTs. That trust is foundational to developing innovation. Chris is a multiplier, and that he multiplies the efforts of others in the general interest of moving ODOT forward. He works diligently and encourages others when they experience success. Congratulations, Chris Pucci. Frank Thomas, Regional Transit Coordinator for Region 5. The nominator writes that Frank works diligently trying to find creative and equitable solutions for those needing transportation, especially in the rural regions of Oregon. Frank's years of experience and heart for providing excellence in customer service is a model that his coworkers hope to emulate. Frank's passion, commitment, and innate goodness make it difficult for anyone to resist his call to do great things. It's hard to turn him down when you know he will do everything in his power to make the effort successful. Congratulations, Frank Thomas. Jaime Viramontes, Project Controls Office Manager. The nominator writes that Jaime is actively involved in finding issues that ODOT needs to take action on and providing the information and resources needed to meet ODOT goals. He is truly dedicated to public service and project delivery. Jaime is gifted at pulling together diverse groups of individuals and forming efficient teams to work towards and achieve a common goal. His expertise, professionalism, and commitment to developing strong and lasting professional relationships is tremendously beneficial to ODOT and the state of Oregon. Congratulations, Jaime Viramontes. Laura Wilson, Traffic Systems Services Unit Assistant Manager. The nominator writes that Laura is always willing to lend her knowledge and time and will work with you until the job is complete. There are countless stories of her helping field personnel repair a signal at all hours of the day. One of her most incredible strengths is that she works with everyone. She listens to their needs and never misses an opportunity to mentor or teach. She wants the best out of everyone, and she gives nothing but 100% of herself. She's always willing to learn and improve. Congratulations, Laura Wilson.
So with this final award, the Bill Tebow Award for Excellence in Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, will honor an individual who goes above and beyond in their role to create, implement, and embrace activities that reflect outstanding examples of diversity. This person was nominated because of their peers and manager, who all recognize that they contribute significantly to advancing diversity within ODOT. Karis?
Thanks. So the winner of the Bill Tebow Award is Shelley Snow, Strategic Communication Coordinator. The nominators write that Shelley has taught us so much about cultural competency through both her work with ODOT and her personal commitment to the values and behaviors exemplified by Mr. Tebow. Shelley is always advocating for what's right and for those who are often overlooked. Shelley is always making herself available to participate in diversity events and serve as a good role model. A notable example is her involvement in organizing and participating in ODOT's Chinese New Year events for 12 years. In her community, Shelley serves as a volunteer mediator, helping neighbors resolve their differences and come to consensus on solutions. She also works with an organization that helps people with physical and developmental disabilities go on cultural exchanges. Please join me in congratulating this year's Bill Tebow Award winner, Shelley Snow.
Congratulations, Shelley. So I want to thank everybody for participating in this year's ODOT Excellence Awards, and thank you to all those who nominated others and coworkers. These awards couldn't happen without you, and your desire to take time and recognize those that you work with and the hard work to commitment and service, leadership, and excellence is absolutely necessary, especially in these tough times. I want to say thank you once again to not just the award winners and the nominees, but all of ODOT. There were 4,700 strong, if not more. And I really, really thank you for all that you do. Keep up the good work, ODOT.
Congratulations to today's award winners, and thank you to today's speakers. And thank you ahead of time to tomorrow's session speakers for your willingness to share information about your work. We look forward to the exciting breakout sessions tomorrow. You all should have your link information that would have been provided in a follow-up iLearn email after you registered. Goodbye, and thanks for joining us.